Part 50. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 502. The three of them trotted all the way and arrived at the monitoring room safely. They didn't even exchange names, and directly called each other as guests, managers, and waiters. Fakato swiped his card to unlock the door and went inside, but he didn't see any security guards, so he asked, "Where are the hotel security guards?" The manager replied, "The number of hotel security guards is limited. They have to check whether the doors of the first floor and the underground garage are closed, and they have to check various places in the hotel to ensure that everyone participates in the inspection. Therefore, there is a shortage of manpower, and no one is in the monitoring room for the time being." Because they were leaving temporarily, the air conditioner inside was turned on. "No wonder I didn't tell you what happened in the banquet hall," Fakato said, without being polite, and sat directly on the chair to operate the computer. The surveillance playback of the banquet hall soon appeared on the screen. The guests entering the banquet hall looked healthy, and no one coughed. Under the arrangement of the banquet manager, everyone began to be checked by the scanner. No one set off the scanner alarm. The lobby manager next to Fakato was puzzled at this time. Although the surveillance camera could not see the specific text on the scanner, judging from the expressions and actions of the security guard and the banquet manager, there was no problem with the scanning result. During this inspection period, the banquet manager also asked two waiters to bring various drinks and provide them to the guests for free. Although the biochemical crisis occurred, most of the guests in the banquet hall were in a good mood. The reason for their happiness was naturally that they had the foresight to choose this hotel, and they were not threatened by biochemical monsters like the people outside. Seeing that Fakato ignored him, the manager said again, "Could it be that the scanner is broken?" Although the clone did not reveal his identity, he felt that Fakato must be a practitioner related to antibiochemical, otherwise how could he be so calm? Fakato's clone accelerated the video and then replied, "I don't know, let's continue to watch." Luo Guang had already confirmed with the computer that this hotel did buy a scanner from BSAA. He was not 100% sure that there was no problem with the scanner, but the quality control of this product was still much stricter than other products. This hotel only bought one, and it happened to buy a problematic scanner, which was unlikely. In addition, Luo Guang suspected that the biochemical crisis in this hotel was related to those biochemical terrorist organizations, so he was more inclined to believe that someone had tampered with it, causing the scanner to fail to detect the virus in the guests. In addition, there is another possibility, that is, these guests do not have the virus in their bodies, so the scanner will naturally not detect the problem. He watched the video carefully through his clone and confirmed one thing, that is, everyone drank the free drinks. It makes sense that diseases enter the body through the mouth. Therefore, when the biochemical crisis occurred, major anti-biochemical organizations would advocate that civilians should drink boiled water under conditions, but this hotel only provided cold drinks. At double speed, Fakato glanced at the time. At this time, he had just gone downstairs to discuss his going out with the lobby manager, which means that the tragedy was about to happen. As expected, more than half of the people had abnormal reactions, coughing and vomiting blood, and the whole banquet hall soon became chaotic. Luo Guang also found that unlike the previous T-virus zombies, these infected people were faster from onset to mutation into zombies, and the mutation was completed in just 12 seconds. In addition, the zombies' movement speed is not much different from that of ordinary T-virus zombies. People who have not mutated directly came from heaven to hell, and were caught and bitten by the zombies around them before they could react. The banquet manager did not mutate into a zombie, and he was speaking on the stage, far away from the zombies. Finally, he hid in a tea cabinet with his belly sticking out. Under another surveillance camera, Luo Guang saw two waitresses guarding the door of the banquet hall. Seeing that things were not going well, they opened the door and ran away. Before Fakato asked, the lobby manager said, Karina is one of the ones who escaped. She asked me for help. Karina was the waitress who had been following them and had not spoken. Luo Guan controlled the clone and said, "Manager, it may not be the scanner that has a problem, it may be the drink that has a problem." The manager was surprised and said, "What do you mean?" Ficado turned his chair and looked at the waitress and said, "From the surveillance, these drinks are prepared by you, right? We are only responsible for pushing them from the kitchen, they are not prepared by us." Karina shook her head quickly, indicating that this matter has nothing to do with her. The manager also said, "It can't be her. Karina has been working here for more than a year and is usually timid and introverted." Ficado did not act aggressively and said, "I am just guessing. These drinks need to be tested for viruses afterwards." Then he asked, "Karina, right? I want to ask where the waitress who ran away with you went." Karina shrank her shoulders and answered tremblingly, "After we escaped, we immediately separated to find helpers. I don't know where she went afterwards." Ficado nodded, turned around and continued to control the computer to confirm the other party's words through surveillance. The manager did not doubt his colleague's words and asked directly, "By the way, what is the name of this guest? I think you don't look like an ordinary person." After all, without any evidence, the guest in front of him suspected the hotel staff, which made him feel uncomfortable. And then he thought, the other party was so anxious to leave the hotel at the beginning. Could it be that he knew that there would be a biochemical crisis here, so he cried thief? After all, his fiancée was still in danger, but the other party was not as anxious as at the beginning, and was analyzing the situation very calmly. Luo Guang knew what the other party meant, and controlled the clone and said, "Just call me Ficado. I usually work in the antibiochemical department. Now I come here for vacation and fishing. Specifically, agent, I can't tell you the specific department." Although Ficado did not take out his ID, the manager was saved by the other party before, and the other party killed the zombies smoothly, so he actually believed his words in his heart. Karina took over the role, and said with grievance in her voice, "Where is your ID? Who knows if you are real or fake? Maybe you are the thief crying thief and want to put the blame on me." Ficado did not look back, and smiled and said to the manager, "Is this what you call timid and introverted?" The manager was still defending the hotel staff, saying, "You were more suspicious of her just now, and it is understandable that Karina was more excited." Ficado replied directly, "I said from the beginning that it was just a guess. Didn't she hear it?" The screen played the situation in the corridor outside the banquet hall. As the other party said, they fled the banquet hall and separated to the left and right. It seems to be in line with Karina's description, but Luo Guang always feels a little strange. The two people who were scared away did not try to lock the door immediately to stop the zombies after leaving the banquet hall. It can also be explained that they forgot and were in a hurry to escape. After escaping from the banquet hall that was about to become hell, another waiter said a few words quickly and then separated. Rightward arrow. Ficado pressed the pause button to confirm the expressions of the two people. Suddenly, there were two heavy sounds of hitting the ground. He turned around and saw that the manager and Karina were both kneeling on the ground and coughing. Ficado's clone also sensed the virus entering his body, but unfortunately the clone did not have the ability to analyze the virus. So he could only use the Shinra virus to wrap up the virus that entered his body. The two people quickly turned into zombies and attacked the clone with their fangs and claws, but they were no match for the clone's one move. After dealing with the two enemies, he looked at the air conditioner in the monitoring room, where the biochemical virus came from. This hotel uses central air conditioning, and Ficado immediately checked the surveillance. Not only this monitoring room, but other survivors in the hotel who were still alive would be infected and mutated into zombies as long as they entered the influence range of the air conditioner. At the same time, he also found that the person who spread the virus in the air conditioner was not Karina, but another waitress. Following the surveillance all the way, tracking the other party's escape route, he found that the other party opened the door of the underground parking lot, escaped, and left the hotel's monitoring range. A big fish escaped. Although Ficado said so, Luo Guang did not give up. If the clone chases him, the enemy doesn't know where to run now, which is too inefficient. So he chose to use the computer here to upload the video to the Red Emperor's server. The main body directly notified the Red Emperor to intercept the content of the video and then sent it to himself, and then he asked the people of the BSAA African branch to keep an eye on this person when they are performing tasks in Suda. Luo Guang did not issue a wanted order because he was worried that his men were not the opponents of the Apocalypse members. Maybe they can catch the other party in the end, but they will definitely suffer heavy losses. In addition to this, there is another point that needs to be told to the front-line troops, that is, this hotel cannot be entered rashly. After finishing all the things, Luo Guang controlled the clone to leave the hotel and go to find the person who called the police. It is still in the early stage of the outbreak, and there are people escaping and zombies scrambling everywhere. The person who called the police is not far from the hotel, about 2 kilometers away in a straight line. The Ficado clone took the fire axe taken from the hotel and moved forward, which reminded Luo Guang of the time when he was in Raccoon City. He also took the fire axe from the apartment to use. The only difference is that now he doesn't have to sneak around in fear. The clone just killed all the enemies who blocked his way and came to the apartment of the caller. This apartment is only 7 stories high and there is no elevator. Ficado walked to the stairwell between the 6th and 7th floors, and the stairs above were smashed by a sledgehammer. Teofilo Knox, are you there? There was no answer, so Ficado didn't hesitate to jump directly to the 7th floor and repeated the sentence. Who are you? The voice sounded in the corridor, and the other party installed a broadcasting device in the corridor. The BSAA sent me. My name is Ficado Iaconoli. You can confirm my identity with the BSAA. As he spoke, the clone also walked along the corridor and came to the door of room 705 where the caller was. When the other party called the police, he mentioned the room number he was in, but it was not 705, but room 702. Wait, obviously, the clone's actions made the caller a little nervous. Ashley from the African branch received the call. After a few words of communication, she confirmed Ficado's identity with Luo Guang before replying. Minister, your people have arrived at the apartment. I know. Although Knox had confirmed Ficado's identity, he still carefully confirmed that there was only one person on the other side through the secret camera and cat's eye before opening the door. He was wearing a jacket and hiking shoes, and said, "Brother, you look so scary now." Ficado was wearing a white shirt stained with blood red, without a tie, and the fire axe in his hand was still dripping with blood. He looked like a perverted killer. Sorry, didn't I say I was in trouble before? It's not so easy to kill it. If there weren't a few zombies downstairs, the axe wouldn't be dripping with blood. Knox looked around and said, "Come in and talk." Ficado entered the room, and with the sound of the door closing, a gun was pointed at the back of his head. "Don't move, throw the axe away." "What do you mean?" Luo Guang did not feel hostility from the other party through the clone, but still threw the axe. Now he prefers to use weapons such as daggers and short swords after excluding hot weapons. "Sorry, it's just safe." Knox took a step back and leaned against the wall directly, away from Ficado. Luo Guang did nothing, just controlled his clone to ignore the other party's gun and turned around. "Okay, stop scaring people with your toy gun. I'm afraid I'll accidentally kill you with my shaking hands," Ficado warned the other party. As mentioned before, Spain can only obtain a license to carry a gun, and Luo Guang checked the other party's identity and found that he did not obtain the 2 certificates that allow him to carry a gun. He continued, "Threatening someone with a head on your head is the worst choice. You don't look like you can use a gun." Knox put down the toy gun in his hand as if he had admitted defeat and asked, How do you know that I have a toy gun? It's made of metal. He really had no ill intentions, but he knew that the other party had something to ask of him, so he wanted to take this opportunity to practice. I'll just trick you. After all, the gun on Fakado's body was not of good origin, and it was still possible that the other party carried a gun without a license. You. Knox sighed and said, "Come in and tell me." Ashley's explanation to him was that BSAA would have agents specifically look for him to understand the situation, and then they would protect him and leave together. That's why Knox looked like he had something to talk about. The two came to the living room, and the clone could see all kinds of canned food and drinking water on the surrounding walls. In order to get closer, Fakado took the initiative to say, "You have more supplies here than I thought. I originally thought it was just a storage room, but I didn't expect that there were so many foods and water in the living room. Aren't you afraid that the neighbors will come to borrow guns?" Knox said, "Anyway, I'm the only one living here, so it doesn't matter. He usually doesn't bother to cook, so he will just open a can and eat." After a brief greeting, Fakado said directly, "Since you already know why I'm here, can you show me the video?" Knox nodded, pulled down the projection screen, and turned on the projector to see the computer desktop. He controlled the computer to play the video. The video was shot with a mobile phone, and the resolution was a bit blurry. Fakado carefully watched the short video of more than 10 seconds, and then confirmed the direction based on the landmarks he had recorded before entering the apartment. "Is this missile coming from the west?" Meow, thanks for subscribing and voting meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Meow. Chapter 503. After hearing Facardo's words, Knox replied, "Yes, the missile came from the west." The news that the Italian submarine was stolen only spread among the upper echelons of each country, so Knox didn't know about it, so he naturally didn't understand what was wrong with missiles coming from the west. Luo Guang understands this matter. Judging from the time it took Spain and the United Kingdom to help block the Strait of Gibraltar and the underwater speed of the Sorrow-class submarines, it is impossible for the enemy to leave the Mediterranean before the blockade is completed. If a submarine is trapped in the Mediterranean, the missiles it carries should be launched from the east, not the west. Therefore, the enemy launching missiles in the west should be coming to pick up the stolen submarine. It is not necessarily a submarine that launches missiles. Installing a missile launcher on a cargo ship can also achieve the same effect, and it is more confusing. When an attack is launched, it will naturally be too late to take defensive measures. If these missiles are not from the Greyhound organization, then there are financial sponsors behind them, and the suspected Beekeeper organization has this strength. Although according to the plot of the Resident Evil Revelations game, the FBC organization is also one of the suspects, he has investigated and confirmed that the FBC has nothing to do with this incident. Morgan would not let the Greyhound organization do something as thankless and easy to get into trouble as stealing submarines. When Luo Guang thought of this, he temporarily stopped thinking. Although it was not necessary, he still went through the whole show and asked the clone to tell the main body what happened through his mobile phone. At the same time, he borrowed Knox's computer to send the video to his computer as evidence. Then he would send the information and evidence to Gil, asking the other party to tell Italy about the missiles. After Facardo completed the report, he said to Knox, "The first batch of soldiers from BSAA are coming soon. Later, they will block the road out of the city and build shelters together with the garrison army. I can send you there if you need it." Although the Spanish Navy did not carry out rescue operations, it opened some bases to accommodate survivors in accordance with the President's order. The Navy's troops did not take the initiative to leave the port and dispersed some personnel to guard each ship. These measures are all aimed at preventing the country from repeating the same mistakes as Italy. Knox understood what the other party meant, shook his head, and said, "I don't want to leave for the time being. It's a rare opportunity to encounter this kind of opportunity. It's the time to verify my preparations for many years. As a doomsday survival enthusiast, he rarely encountered this kind of opportunity, and his years of preparation were not in vain. How could he give up the actual combat opportunity so easily? Resident Evil is no joke. Both zombies and humans may threaten your life. Facardo continued to persuade, my neighbor stores grain and I buy a gun. My neighbor is my granary. Although you are fully prepared, what will you do if someone wants to rob you? Knox was not a fool either. He smiled and said, isn't it you? You want me to stay here? Facardo raised his eyebrows, feeling a little funny. That's right. Of course, if you have other tasks, I won't force you to stay. After all, this is just to satisfy Knox's own desires. Compared with the mission of antibiochemical agents, he can still decide which is more important. Luo Guang thought for a moment, and the clone seemed to have nothing to do before confirming the location of the waitress. But there are still many survivors in the city of Suda, or the clones can save these people. Because it is not the main body, even if the strength is exposed, it will not have any impact on itself. Thinking like this, he controlled the clone and replied, there is no specific mission, but I plan to save other survivors. Let me help you. Knox's eyes lit up. Facardo asked strangely, how do you want to help me? You can bring the survivors back here and resettle them. I will be responsible for managing them and use this apartment as a temporary shelter. Managing a post-apocalyptic community is something Knox has always wanted to achieve. Not long after he finished college, his parents lost their lives in a car accident. The apartment building was one of the assets his parents left him. For various reasons, he did not rent out the other rooms on the 7th floor. Therefore, Luo Guang's clone only sensed Knox on the 7th floor, and then he accurately walked to the door of room 705. Facardo commented on the person in front of him that a newborn calf is not afraid of tigers. Although it is not the end of the world, people are unpredictable. Even if the order has not completely collapsed, some people will still take risks and unleash human nature. However, the clone is also equipped with the ability to sense emotions, so it should be preventable. Facardo told the other party the danger involved, and then said, I have no obligation to protect you, you have to think about it. I know Knox didn't flinch. After discussing the matter, Luo Guang controlled the clone to stand up and picked up the fire axe that he had dropped earlier. There was a clang and he turned to look at Knox. Someone crossed the infrared detector. Knox immediately told Facardo what the sound meant. Then he controlled the surveillance in the corridor, quickly locked on the target, and asked, is this your colleague? No, it's just me. Facardo looked at the screen. Because the other party was leaning sideways, he couldn't see his face clearly, but he saw the other party stopped in room 702. Facardo's clone asked, Knox, what's in room 702? The other party replied, there is nothing, only room 704 brought me some cans. Knox and the other person heard the other parties shouting through the monitor, and the content was not much different from what Facardo had shouted before. Teofilo Knox, are you there? The other party's voice was somewhat neutral. Naturally, no one answered her, so she shouted again, I am an agent of the African branch of BSAA, this is my ID, please open the door. Unlike Facardo, the other party took out his ID and held it in front of the cat's eye. Luo Guang's face was a little solemn. The other party's operation was obviously aware of the conversation between Ashley and Knox, which meant that the telephone line in his office was monitored. But in this case, the other party could not have been unaware that he had contacted the other party. Facardo whispered to Knox, the person who comes is not friendly, you should be careful. Knox heard this, plus the woman's shouting, which made him a little confused about the current situation. Although Facardo did not take out his ID, it was confirmed by the people in the African branch, but the guy who took out his ID on the screen was told that there was a problem. This confused him. Seeing that there was still no response, the uninvited guest stopped pretending and kicked the door of room 702 open. Now Knox also felt that there was something wrong with the other party. The other party might also be worried that something might happen to him, the person who called the police, so he violently broke the door, but this statement is not valid. Because the telephone communication and the network were not interrupted, and BSAA knew his phone number, so couldn't he just make a call before kicking the door? Luo Guang didn't know what Knox was thinking. He first asked Hong Huang to help confirm the communication system of the African branch, and then controlled the clone to say to Knox, "Check if your phone is being monitored. I'll go to meet the other party." He wanted to take the initiative to capture the other party and then force a confession directly. I know Knox had no objection and immediately did it. The man walked around room 702 and didn't see Knox. He was about to leave, but saw a person standing at the door. It was pitch black inside, with only the corridor shining, so she couldn't see who was coming for a while. Luo Guang saw the other person clearly. It was the waitress who escaped from the hotel. The other person was on full alert and immediately pulled out a gun, but the clone was faster and directly hit the other person's lungs. Because he was worried about bursting the enemy's lungs, the clone used normal strength. Damn it, the other person did not get a stitch in the side. He raised one hand to block the clone's next attack, and at the same time, the hand holding the gun retreated to his waist. She retracted the gun to prevent it from being taken away and shooting at close range. Originally, Luo Guang planned to use a strangle technique to strangle the other person while the other person was in a state of stiffness, but he didn't expect that the other person could still move normally. But he's too naive. The clone accelerated again, knocked the weapon out of the other person's hand, and then attacked from behind the enemy, using a simple standing naked choke. In the face of absolute power, the opponent's resistance could not stop the clone from tightening up, and he soon fainted. Taking advantage of this time, the clone immediately rolled the Shinra virus into a mud ball, and then stuffed it into the other person's mouth and swallowed it. After a while, Knox ran over with the rope and happened to see Fukado taking off the other person's shirt. He shouted, "What are you doing?" Fukado looked back at the other person, despising the other person's dirty thoughts, and said, "She is still wearing clothes inside, why are you shouting?" He didn't have any improper thoughts about this enemy, but just broke the headset communicator and other things on the enemy's body, and removed the locator behind his neck. Then there is only one underwear left. Fukado saw the other person's blushing face that could not be concealed, and he knew that the other person was probably still a virgin. Now Luo Guang was not in the mood to tease the other person, so the clone interrupted directly and said, "Tights." This tights still looked so familiar. After testing it, it was indeed the improved version that Wang Wei wore back then. The defense was strengthened a little, and there was no other change. Fukado took the rope handed over by Knox, who looked embarrassed, and tied the other person up in the tortoise shell binding method. He didn't show mercy to the woman and dragged her back directly. "I want a room without any monitoring." When he returned to Knox's house, he directly asked for his request. Room 702 just now obviously also has monitoring equipment, otherwise Knox would not have come at such a coincidence and brought a rope. Knox asked, "Why is this?" Fukado's tone was very cold, saying, "If you don't want to be chased and ask the killer why he wanted to kill you, just pretend that you don't know the existence of this person in the end." He still gave the other party a little reminder, saying, "The organization behind the other party dares to provoke even the country, and it is easy to destroy you." Knox's face was panicked and goosebumps appeared. It was not because of Fukado's words, but the change in the other party's temperament that made him feel scared. At this time, he realized that what the other party said when he was threatened with a toy gun was true, and said, "I know. But I have installed monitoring and listening equipment everywhere on the 7th floor, so you can only go to room 603 on the 6th floor, which has not been rented out yet." Watching Ficado carrying the other party away, Knox exhaled and thought about what he should do next. Ficado brought a chair over and poured a glass of water on the man to wake him up. I ask you to answer without waiting for the other party to look around to confirm the situation, the clone asked. What is your name? Luo Guang can now create keywords so that the person under his control cannot reveal confidential matters. He was worried that the other party also had such a setting, so he did not directly ask about the Apocalypse organization. My name is Gloria Sawyer. Gloria did not resist and said her name obediently. She looked at Ficado with an unbelievable expression on her face, and suddenly said, "You are the person in the hotel." Ficado leaned forward slightly, approached the other party, and said, "Do you know me?" "You are from BSAA." Gloria's answer was as expected by Luo Guang. "Tell me how you know me." Under the powerful suggestion of the Shinra virus, Gloria did not realize that she was leaking the secrets of the organization. She only thought that if she didn't say it, she would have to endure unbearable torture. So she quickly answered, "We tapped Knox's phone and knew that someone from Falcardo Iaconoli would go to him." Before Luo Guang asked, she spilled the beans. "I was lurking at the Parador Chutta Hotel half a month ago. When you checked in, I happened to pass by and heard the front desk say your name, so I wrote it down." Go on. Falcardo didn't ask, letting the other party finish first. "After the mission started, the intelligence department told me about your relationship with BSAA, so I knew you." Gloria asked her confusion, "But I clearly put the virus in the hotel. Why are you okay?" She left the hotel before Falcardo, but she needed to go back to her safe base to change her equipment and clean up any traces of the organization there. As for the video footage in the hotel, it didn't matter, her current appearance was disguised. So in the end she was one step slower than Falcardo's clone. Although the other party violated his request for her to answer, Luo Guang did not let his clone slap her, saying, "This has nothing to do with you. Did you monitor the communication of B.S.A.? Hong Huan quickly checked and confirmed that the telephone line was not intercepted by someone. Gloria's answer verified this point, saying, "No, all this information was obtained by monitoring Knox's phone." She actually received intelligence notification that Ficado had contacted the target, but she did not back down, but planned to use the information gap to complete the task. "So your target is Knox?" Luo Guang gradually unraveled the truth. Gloria said, "He is the C-level adapter designated by the organization." Luo Guang, who was far away at the headquarters, was stunned. He had only heard the name of adapter from the system. Wang Qianglin, who met in Harlan City before, only said that she was a B-level member. What does C-level adapter mean? People who are adaptable to a single virus. This is what the organization told Gloria. Luo Guang was surprised that the level distinction he made up about Hank and Victor was so similar. But after thinking about it for a while, he thought it was just a coincidence. Hank and Victor would never betray him. He controlled his clone to continue asking, "What level are you? Why did you capture these adapters?" Meow. Thank you for subscribing, rewarding, and voting. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 504. Luo Guang's interrogation continued. No one interrupted and not many accidents happened. Gloria replied, "I am just a C-level member. The organization needs these adapters to strengthen the organization's strength." Luo Guang learned from the information sent by Leon to the Avengers Forum that some members of the Beekeeper organization were survivors of the biochemical crisis they created themselves. However, the other party should not know the specific situation, so he asked, "What will happen if Knox is caught by you?" "I don't know. This is news that only members of A level and above can know." Although a little disappointed, it was still within Luo Guang's expectations. He continued to ask, "Are you the only one carrying out the mission in Suda? I have 4 teammates, dispersed to trap the target." The Apocalypse organization generally does not directly use violent means to capture people. It's not that they don't like violence and love peace, but the operatives sent out are basically handsome men and beautiful women, who can use their own advantages to easily approach the target, which can also reduce the possibility of the organization being exposed. Although Gloria in front of him is a little inferior in figure, her face is as delicate as a doll, probably selected according to Knox's preferences. By the way, Wang Wei, whom he met, was also in his strike zone, but he was with Jill at that time. Luo Guang thought while controlling his clone and asked, "I want their information. Before the gathering, I didn't know their identities or their goals." Gloria explained, "Our organization is huge, with many members, and they all have their own cover identities, so even if 2 people from the same organization often deal with each other, they may not be able to find out that the other party is their own. There are other confidentiality measures, which she explained in detail. The Apocalypse organization is not so cautious, so how could it be lurking under the nose of the X organization? You should not know the relationship between your organization and the Greyhound organization, right?" Although he didn't hold out hope, Luo Guang still asked his clone to ask this question. Gloria gave him a little surprise and said, "Yes. But when I heard the mission description, the Greyhound organization was mentioned." Fikado's clone's eyes lit up and asked quickly, "What did you say?" The other party replied, "Just say that after the Greyhound organization's attack is launched, we, the operatives, will start to act." This is not very meaningful. It can only mean that the Apocalypse organization knows the Greyhound organization's action plan. This can be cooperation or intelligence from undercover agents. It cannot be used as evidence to confirm the cooperation between the two. Fikado asked again, "Was it the Greyhound organization that launched the missile?" The other party still said that he didn't know. The key intelligence of this incident was not told to these people at all. "It seems that we can only arrest a few more people for interrogation." Luo Guang sorted out the information and sent it to the Avengers Forum. The clone did not carry a battlefield recorder. Next time, he had to equip the clones with networked recorders. While thinking about how to improve it, Luo Guang controlled the clone to continue asking, "Where is the gathering point? Take me there." Gloria said a place. They would gather in a single-family villa near the outskirts of the city. Luo Guang casually conveyed the information to Hong Huang and asked her to confirm the situation of the villa. While waiting, Fikado's clone was still understanding the other party's situation. For example, the other party's experience from childhood to adulthood, to see if he could get a glimpse of the big picture and learn more about the Apocalypse organization. "I have lived in the organization's orphanage since I can remember, and entered the organization's training center at the age of 7 until I graduated as an adult. After I came out, I found a job and went into hiding." Wang Wei also said a lot about the training center, but Luo Guang didn't deliberately learn too much at that time. He controlled Fikado to interrupt and asked, "Will you get the graduation certificate of the outside school after graduation?" "Yes." Gloria paused and said, "It is said that when we were in the training center, there were also our substitutes in those schools. When we graduate, we will replace the substitutes. So after graduation, these substitutes will lose contact directly. Given the number of people in your organization, this will consume a lot of stand-ins." "I don't know about this. I haven't asked." Gloria has never seen a stand-in before, and has no feelings for it, as if it is natural for her to replace everything about the other person. "What will the training center teach you?" "Everything. Various languages, mathematics, makeup, etc., and there is a specialized class every day, which is assigned according to what everyone is good at." "Then what are you good at?" "Acrobatics." Hearing this, Luo Guang behind him was stunned. Finally, The clone slowly asked, "Your training center even has a special teacher to teach acrobatics? It has nothing to do with your current job, right?" The chief instructor of the training center said that every profession has its own role and can contribute to the organization. Acrobatics includes many kinds of skills, among which I am best at cartilage skills. Gloria continued to answer the second question. As for work, there will always be a time when it is needed, and I have also learned special fighting skills that match cartilage skills. After a pause, she said, "Apart from these, I don't remember much about the training center, and the address is often changed." Luo Guang felt that the other party might not remember clearly, but just couldn't remember. After all, the Apocalypse organization seems to have mastered the technology of modifying and deleting memories. Facardo is interrogating the enemy, and the main body is constantly sharing the previously obtained information about the stolen submarine with his girlfriend. Jill told Kajestan through Parker. In the end, Kajestan couldn't sit still and took the initiative to summon Jill and 3 other people, including Parker, to hold an online conference. He said, "Minister Valentine, you said the intelligence provided by the African division said the missiles came from the west." Hearing this, he felt relieved again. He and the Italian government behind him always believed that the missile was launched by his own stolen submarine, with the purpose of escaping from the Mediterranean Sea by taking advantage of the chaos. Kajestan asked, "Has this submarine slipped through the Strait of Gibraltar?" Gil told Luo Guang's calculations and said, "When Spain and the United Kingdom started to assist in the blockade, the submarines had not yet reached the other side of the strait. Unless there are loopholes in the underwater blockade of the two countries, the submarines will not be able to escape." Luo Guang, as the hero of the company rebellion, does he have any guesses? Luo Guang's identity made Kajestan decide to take this information seriously. Gil said, he asked Italy, or all countries or organizations that possess Harpoon anti-ship missiles to check their arsenals. Also, this incident may be related to the Beekeeper organization. She also has her own thoughts, although he didn't say it. "I'm worried that Spain and the UK will relax their vigilance in the water because of these 2 biochemical crises, and the stolen submarine may really slip away by then." It's not that Luo Guang didn't expect this, it's just that his attention is now on the Apocalypse organization. In his opinion, the Apocalypse organization is a greater threat than the Greyhound organization that once appeared in the game. The unknown is the biggest fear, so he must find a way to expose the conspiracy hidden behind it. After listening to Gil's words, Kajestan thought for a moment and said, "I will report it immediately and go through the channels of the United Nations and let other countries conduct inspections. At the same time, I will also send people to contact Spain and Spain to inquire about the situation." Gil had no objection to this, and turned to ask about the situation on the FBC side, that is, in the city of Gibraltar. Kajestan replied, "There is no new information from Abra. Abra Bazur, this is the name of another person in charge. What about the Italian Navy? If the other party really wants to use chaos to leave the Mediterranean, the stolen submarine must be lurking near the strait. It's already on the way, but if the other party wants to escape, our navy will definitely not be able to make it in time. We can only hope for the navies of Spain and Spain." Gil said, "Let me help you ask the African branch to see what's going on in Spain." Kajestan was also about to hang up the communication and said, "Okay, I will also contact my superiors to explain the situation. Wait, I have one more thing." Then, Gil said to Parker, who had been listening to the conversation without interrupting, "Parker, I'm going to ask you to make a report with Kajestan. If you have any questions, you can call me directly." Parker closed the notebook in his hand and said, "I know. After all, this information is provided by BSAA, and BSAA must accompany the other party to report it." The conversation between the two basically covered the possible situations, and there was no need for him to make some useless suggestions just to express himself. One more thing. After you finish the report, you should go back to the headquarters. Justin, let's contact him by phone afterwards. What Jill said was good news for Parker. I know Parker didn't show excitement on his face, but he was already cheering in his heart. Justin said, where are your other agents? Since Gil wants to retreat from Italy, he must make a good handover with his counterpart, Justin. She replied, if they have finished teaching your troops, I will have them come back too. Justin asked, can you tell me the reason? Parker was curious about this too. Gil didn't hide anything and said, it doesn't make much sense for them to continue to stay here. It's better to help investigate the beekeeper organization. The beekeeper organization has also created biological crises in other places. Their soldiers have discovered traces of the enemy and need to send experienced agents to follow up. Both parties hung up the communication and began to deal with the tasks at hand. The focus was drawn back to the city of Suda. Facardo's clone took Gloria back to Knox's house and told him that his target was him. Knox would not directly accept the clone's words, as he still had many questions in his mind. The first thing that was difficult to understand was that Gloria was not restricted from moving at this time. He asked with confusion, why did she? I am big enough and strong enough, so I made her abandon the darkness and turn to the light. Knox definitely didn't believe his lies, so the clone added, I got her handle. Even if she doesn't help, she will eventually be silenced by her organization. This is true. For the Apocalypse organization, B-level products are all street products, let alone C-level products like Gloria. Gloria also cooperated very well, saying, I failed my mission, so naturally I have no use value. Luo Guang's plan is to make the clone look like Knas, and then follow Gloria to the gathering point, find an opportunity to infect other members of the Apocalypse organization, and finally follow the clues to find a higher level Apocalypse member. He had only damaged the other party's communication equipment before, and the locator was only removed, not damaged, and it has been reinstalled at this time. If this locator is not connected to the plug on the tights, it will directly interrupt the information transmission. This is to prevent people from finding the base location along the network. Now the only problem is Knox, and Luo Guang needs his cooperation. Although the situation is a bit unbelievable because the other party betrayed too quickly, Knox can only accept the setting and asked, why does your organization want to arrest me? He is a otaku who collects rent and waits for death every day. In addition to liking the doomsday survival and having a lot of skills in this area, he has no strengths. However, from Luo Guang's point of view, the other party is actually a template of a doomsday protagonist, and he is not nervous when facing the biochemical crisis, which shows that the other party also has the advantage of a stable mentality. Gloria said bluntly, mating. If everything goes well, Knox's breeding partner will be herself. When Knox heard this, she immediately blushed, her hands waved helplessly, and her brain was working fast. Facado's clone interrupted the fantasy in Knox's mind and said, Knox, don't worry about fantasy. Let's talk business. Stay at home during this period and don't run around, even if this biochemical crisis is over, until the BSAA notifies you that you can move freely. Knox had some guesses in his mind. Why? Their organization is suspected of being involved in this biochemical crisis. As a righteous anti-biochemical warrior, I am going to take down the enemy's hideout. Are you alone? Not waiting for support? You also said before that the BSAA soldiers have arrived. Knox heard the other party's tone and planned to go to the meeting alone and solve the enemy alone. Luo Guang and Facado's clone sighed at the same time. He thought of the Holmes clone before and said, because the enemy is the kind of person who will blow up the entire base if they disagree. It's better for me to die alone than for everyone to die together. The clone's words did not have the kind of selfless determination, but just indifference to death. This still made Knox stand in awe and couldn't help but feel ashamed of his previous thoughts. Indeed, This biochemical crisis made his preparations as a doomsday survivalist meaningful, but he ignored the sacrifices behind this disaster. So he adjusted his mentality and said to the clone seriously, "Is there anything else you need me to do? Give me one of your clothes, preferably with a hood, and I want to pretend to be you." Fakato directly said everything he needed to do. "That's why I need you to stay hidden and hide here. If you have an emergency, you can directly contact the African branch, and they will send someone to rescue you. He must not let the enemy get what they want." According to Gloria, the combat power of a C-class member is equivalent to that of a well-trained elite soldier, so Luo Guang does not need to send another clone to protect him. Nox nodded to show that he understood. After looking at Falcardo's figure, he entered the room and took out a black jacket with a hood. Meow, Happy Lantern Festival. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 505. The two left the apartment, and the stand-in plan officially began. In the blink of an eye, the Fakato clone turned into Nox's appearance, with the same height and slightly heavier weight. Gloria did not react to this. Luo Guang had already modified her cognition. At this time, in her opinion, she had successfully completed the task, kidnapped Nox through seduction, and then took him to the gathering point. Luo Guang used hints to modify the other party's cognition in order to prevent the other party from showing flaws in behavior and words. The two did not move forward very fast. Gloria could easily deal with those zombies in a one-on-one or even one-on-three situation, but if there were more, accidents would easily occur. The Fakato clone was now playing the role of Nox, so it could only show one-on-one combat power at most. In this way, when they encountered chaotic areas or zombie groups, they had to sneak or take a detour, so the speed of advancement was much slower. After going around in circles, there were no accidents along the way, and the two finally arrived at their destination. Fakato asked, "Why is the villa so dark?" There was no power outage or water outage in Suda, and the street lights outside and the lights at the door of the villa next door were all on. Gloria thought for a moment and replied, "Maybe no one lived there originally, or we were the first to arrive." She didn't know the specific situation very well. It only told her where the gathering place was, and nothing else was mentioned. She could only make some reasonable guesses. So she decided, let's go in first. There may be clues inside. Fakato's clone nodded and followed Gloria, looking left and right, as if confirming the situation around him. He could sense that someone was watching him from behind the curtains, but he didn't speak to remind Gloria because he didn't know if this was a security check by the Apocalypse organization. The two of them pushed open the iron gate of the garden directly, and the main gate of the villa inside was the same. When they went in, there were no signs of theft, and no footprints were found on the ground. Here Gloria quickly found a clue on a table. Go to the private gym on the left side of the third floor. Fakato's clone said in accordance with the situation of ordinary people, could this be a trap set by other enemies? For example, the bad guys who want to catch me. In order not to interfere with the surveillance equipment that may exist here, Luo Guang did not scan, so he should be careful when speaking. Gloria shook her head and said, how is it possible? Since the higher UPS chose to gather here, they will definitely ensure the safety of this place. In her mind, she actually felt that the Apocalypse organization was hidden enough and the enemy could not find their tail at all. Okay, Fakato's clone pretended to be slightly suspicious and followed Gloria to the third floor. There were 3 doors on the left side of the third floor, but there were signs on them, so they pushed the door directly and entered the room indicated on the note. Although it was a gym, there was no gym equipment inside. There was only one table. With the dim light from the window, the two found an intercom on it. Fakato looked at the only window in the gym. There was no curtain installed, and the glass was very transparent. The sight he sensed from the outside was in the villa opposite the window. Gloria walked towards the table carefully, paying attention to her feet and the ceiling to make sure there were no traps. Before she picked up the intercom, a woman's voice suddenly came from the machine. Mission number CNK230965663T. Gloria directly pressed the call button, pronounced the number clearly, and said it word by word. This number is randomly generated, and there is no limit on the number of digits. Every operator must remember his or her number. The other party seemed to be confirming whether the number was correct. After a while, he said, "The number is correct. Gloria, go to the east window and stand at the marked position on the ground." "Wait, this is too dangerous." "Windows are dangerous places in movies." Luo Guang immediately controlled the clone to stop the other party. Of course, he had to act in full. Gloria is now very loyal to the organization. She stood at the marked point without any hesitation, and also told the clone not to interrupt. The voice appeared again in the intercom. "Answer my question, what happened to your communication equipment?" "When Knox and I met Ficado, a fake agent of BSAA. This part of the content can be verified with the intelligence department. It is not known whether it was to put pressure on Gloria or to really verify it." After a while, the other party replied, "The verification is correct, but according to your report, the other party should have turned into a zombie. How could he go to a place 2 kilometers away?" Gloria answered this question seriously, "I don't know why the other party didn't turn into a zombie, and he went to the location one step faster than me. If you don't know something, don't say it clearly, instead of talking nonsense." Then she said what happened afterwards. "Fortunately, Knox didn't open the door at that time, and I stopped him in time, otherwise he would have been knocked unconscious and abducted." In Gloria's cognition, she did this, so she was not afraid even if she took the polygraph. After thinking for a while, the other party asked again, "Tell me how you solved the enemy." "I attacked by surprise. But the enemy's combat effectiveness is not weak. The communication equipment I carried was damaged by the enemy, and I have destroyed it." Gloria didn't wait for the other party to ask questions and told her about the locator, saying, "My locator was also knocked out by the enemy during the battle. In the end, the enemy let it slip. Knox opened the door to help me attract the enemy's attention. With my strength, I successfully counterattacked." The other party had no intention of accepting her statement and questioned, "You are carrying a weapon, but in the end you fired a sneak attack and failed to defeat the enemy with one move." Gloria shook her head and replied, "The other party noticed my presence and avoided the fatal blow." The person in charge of the inquiry was a B-level member. She was not surprised that the C-level member made a mistake. She compiled all the information and sent it to the headquarters. Facardo waited quietly in the gym, with a slightly nervous look on his face. A few minutes later, the other party's voice sounded again, saying, "Congratulations on passing the test, come to the villa in front of you. Others have already arrived. If it fails, a sniper bullet will penetrate directly into Gloria's brain, and Knox will be brought back by her." Facardo's clone pulled Gloria away without letting down his guard and said, "Aren't you from BSAA, why are you so strict?" Gloria comforted Knox, held the clone's hand naturally, and said, "You are the target of those enemies, so we must act with caution. Using inadvertent physical contact can help the other person's feelings heat up and make men misunderstand." This is what she learned in training and she used it naturally. Gloria had already made several plans in her mind, preparing to use them on Knox. Unfortunately, an accident occurred, and her plan was caught by the clone before she could implement it. Facardo's clone, who looked exactly like Knox, didn't stop talking, and Gloria could only keep comforting him. When the two came to the villa next door, the clone shut his mouth. It was brightly lit here, and the B-level person in charge was named Billy Follis. She ushered the two in and took them to a room on the second floor. Rightward arrow. Billy is nearly 2 meters tall, very tall, and will stand out in the crowd. But the other party was actually assigned to carry out such a secret mission, and Luo Guan couldn't help but want to know the reason. There were 8 people in the room, exactly 4 men and 4 women. Luo Guan guessed that these should be the targets of the apocalypse and the people responsible for the abduction. Gloria took him and said hello to the others. Soon, he knew that 3 women and 1 man among the 4 men and 4 women were members of the Apocalypse organization. Luo Guan thought in his mind that these 4 people were all handsome guys and beauties, and unlike the current internet celebrities who all had the same style, the 3 beauties each had their own merits. There is a charming one, a pure one, and a quiet one. In addition to their temperaments, their bodies are also different, and they are not all pursuing falsehood. As for that man, he is a personable type, his manners and conversation are polite and friendly, and his target has obviously been conquered by him. In addition, the 3 men and 1 woman also took the initiative to chat with Knox. Luo Guan took the opportunity to learn about the situation from them and confirmed that they all thought that the person who brought him here was an agent of BSAA. Luo Guan thought of Gloria's BSAA certificate. The workmanship was exactly the same, but the serial number could not be found, but this was enough for ordinary people to be unable to confirm the authenticity of the certificate. Therefore, he concluded that the other party's method of leaving Suda must have nothing to do with BSAA. After all, their IDs could be seen through just checking the code. Facardo and Gloria did not expose their chicken feet at this stage and successfully integrated into their respective chat groups. Billy came back after contacting her superiors, closed the door, observed for a moment, and then clapped her hands. After she saw that everyone was focusing on her, she began to describe the plan arranged by the above. Now that everyone is here, let's wait for the Spanish military car to come and pick us up and leave. Someone immediately asked, like a curious baby, why Spanish troops? Aren't you from B.S.A.? Billy looked very good-tempered and replied, our agents should have told you that someone is going to do something against you. The purpose of using Spanish military vehicles is to deceive the enemy. Does the enemy really exist? The member of the apocalypse with a pure temperament immediately answered her future partner, didn't I say it before? The enemy is the Greyhound organization, and they also created this biological crisis. The only ones who are hostile to me along the way are zombies. I have never seen the biochemical terrorist organization you mentioned. Several others nodded in agreement. Gloria took the initiative to signal to the Facardo clone. Billy also looked at the clone. So Luo Guan controlled the clone, slightly modified the words of what Gloria reported before, and said it again. The others had no other problems at this time, and no one suspected that he was a charlatan. Okay, if there are no other questions, I still have some. Puff. Just when Billy wanted to explain the rules, a long fart sound sounded from Knox, who looked embarrassed. Luo Guan suppressed a smile in his office. This was a way he came up with on the fly to quickly infect everyone in the room without being alerted. Facado's clone touched his belly and said sorry with an apologetic expression. When everyone heard the fart sound, they moved away from Facado's clone. But everyone was in the same room, so the people in the room had no way to escape. They all smelled the stinky fart. Their faces turned dull and their bodies seemed a little unstable. Luo Guan quickly gave hints to let everyone regain their normal expressions and stand firm again. After Billy finished talking about the rules, she contacted her superiors again and applied for a temporary change of location on the grounds of preventing the enemy from discovering their plan. After the superiors agreed, he asked her to take everyone out of the villa. Everyone arrived at a place where the Apocalypse organization had no surveillance installed, and Facado's clone began to work. He had only one goal, that was this person named Billy, hoping that she could provide some information different from Wang Qianglin. In order not to leak information, it was necessary to temporarily cut off the communication between Billy and her superiors, and the reason for changing to a place without surveillance was the same. Luo Guang tried his best not to alarm other people in the Apocalypse organization, but it was inevitable that someone would notice the instantaneous change in Billy and others' expressions. So in the end, whether to pack them up and take them back to the African branch of BSAA or continue to play the long game depends on the next situation. In a clean room without surveillance, all the people controlled by Luo Guang using the Shinra virus are inside. At the same time, he also used his clone to block all signals from the devices of the members of the Apocalypse organization, ensuring that the communication devices on the other party could not contact them temporarily. If the watch developed by Hong Huang was there, perhaps there would be no need to block the communication, or even intercept the communication, so that Hong Huang could try to confirm the location of the server and database of the Apocalypse organization on the internet. But Hong Huang's watch is very precious, and Luo Guang may only equip his clone with a simplified version in the future. At this time, everyone except Billy fell into a deep sleep. Billy's strength seems to be her strong will. Although Luo Guang has controlled B-level members before, even at the same level, everyone's willpower is different. And the willpower of this person named Billy is higher than that of Wang Qianglin. He noticed this and immediately controlled the Shinra virus in Billy's body to increase and strengthen the control over her brain. After doing all this, Luo Guang controlled his clone to formally ask, "Tell me about your own mission first. Gather the operatives and members of the reserve organization for this capture mission, use the Spanish military's armored vehicles to take them all away from Ceuta, and then immediately change the means of transportation to enter the territory of the Kingdom of Morocco." Billy's eyes were dull, and she recalled silently in her mind, while she spoke the content of the mission along with her memories. She continued, "After returning to the base, hand it over to the memory department to transform the memory of the adapters so that they can smoothly integrate into our big family. Are all these adapters C-level?" Luo Guang wanted to confirm the physical condition of others. He wanted to draw their blood for examination later to see what was special about the genes of the so-called C-level adapters. "Yes, we have only found C-level adapters in Ceuta so far." Billy really climbed to this level by her own strength, and she was the person in charge of the operation on the spot, so she knew more things. "How did you make that judgment?" "This is a matter for the Adapter Investigation Department, I don't know." Billy couldn't answer Luo Guang's question. The Apocalypse organization had a clear division of labor, and the various departments wouldn't ask too much about each other. "Where is your next destination?" Billy told him the address, and Luo Guang immediately asked the GIMZ troops to send someone over to check the location in advance and confirm and register the entry and exit. Meow, thank you for your subscription and votes. I'm very sorry, there was a wrong name in the previous chapter, it should be K. Jeston. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 506. Two people were talking in the office of the director of the Apocalypse's secret base in Africa. The owner of the office was named Karji Koichalin. After listening to the report from her subordinates, she asked, "You said that the action team in Ceuta applied for a new contact point." The person reporting the situation was called Mikva Potakai, who confirmed, "Yes, the on-site person in charge Billy said that there was an unexpected situation." "What accident?" "She met someone from the BSAA during the arrest of the C-level adapter Knox." Mikva told Gloria about what she had reported at the beginning about Ficado, including the fact that the other party was commissioned by the BSAA. After inhaling the biochemical virus, he did not mutate into a zombie. So it seems that the guy named Ficado is at least a C-level adapter supervisor. Karji did not expect to have an unexpected gain. Mikve shook his head and said, "But the operatives responsible for Knox killed him during the mission, so he couldn't be caught." Kalji was unwilling to give up the credit that was so easy to get, and asked, "What about his body?" Although he was dead and could not be reused by modifying his memory, the body also had various uses. From the report, it should be left where Knox lived. The operatives definitely didn't have time to deal with the body. Then send someone to recover this person's body and bring it back for research. McVeigh manipulated the tablet in his hand and said, 2 hidden members have just been activated and notified to recover it. Kalji nodded and said, back to the topic at the beginning. Is it because the BSAA sent agents and had contact with our personnel that Billy applied for a change of position? That's right. She said that the BSAA troops had already launched a cleanup operation in Suda, and the fact that Facardo lost contact would definitely attract the attention of the BSAA, so. Kalji interrupted the other party. She already understood what the other party meant. I see. Go contact Billy and confirm the situation again. Yes, McVeigh. I controlled the tablet, but soon there was a reply. She looked at her supervisor and said, the intelligence department said that Billy and the others have a very poor signal and cannot be contacted at all. The members of the Apocalypse, including Billy, did not know that there were other members in Suda who had not activated. According to Billy, in order to prevent monitoring signals, the organization generally does not take the initiative to contact the operatives, and its intelligence department will only provide the operatives with the required intelligence when they need it. Luo Guang was worried that the headsets used by the enemy also had monitoring functions, so he blocked the signals of their communication equipment. At this time, he was still trying to get as much information about the Apocalypse organization from Billy as possible. Combine what Billy knew with the information obtained from Wang Fengjiao and Xiaoying's questions and answers, as well as the information obtained from other members of the Apocalypse organization in the past. He now has a general understanding of the content of the eugenics plan within the Apocalypse organization. Like Wang Fengjiao, they were basically assigned to cities in various countries to lurk after graduating from the training center. In addition to normal agent tasks, if a suitable adapter appears, the suitable member will receive the task, take the initiative to attack and take down the other party, marry and have children with the other party. This task is not divided by gender, only the degree of compatibility is considered. Under normal circumstances, the children born by 2C level are likely to be C level, but there is a small probability that B level or D level children will appear. The overall feeling is that Palu is being cultivated, but these children will not be raised by their parents, but will be raised in the organization's nursery. In order to cultivate the loyalty of new members, the Apocalypse organization does not even have their own surnames before graduating from the training ground. Only after successfully graduating and proving themselves will they be given surnames according to the source of their bloodline. Luo Guang asks Xiaoying to ask Wang Fengjiao why there seemed to be more people with the surname Wang in the organization. As a result, Wang Fengjiao proudly stated that her bloodline was one of the S-level bloodlines in the organization. This is not a fantasy world with dragons. The stronger the bloodline, the higher the quality of sperm and eggs, the higher the success rate of reproduction, and the more people there will be. Luo Guang just took precautions and chose a safe period to do late-night exercise, otherwise Jill and Ashley would have to keep giving birth. There are also some uncertain intelligence, which comes from Wang Fengjiao's gossip. Contrary to the previous C-level couples, even if both parents are S-level, the probability of the offspring being A-level is higher, and there are also offspring like Wang Qianglin who can be said to be degraded. Therefore, the Apocalypse organization attaches great importance to S-level adapters, who have various privileges in the organization, and at the same time, they do not need to go on missions, but only need to enjoy life and help the organization expand. It is precisely because of the special nature of the Wang bloodline that Wang Fengjiao knows a little more. But before he finished asking, the floor where Holmes's clone was located was blasted and burned, and Wang Fengjiao was naturally gone, so Luo Guang could not ask more useful things. In short, B-level members in the organization basically know this part of the content. For example, the Apocalypse organization creates biochemical crises around the world in order to capture people and bring them back to the organization, but they don't know why these people are sent out again to carry out missions. If Luo Guang wants to know more about the Apocalypse organization, he must find a way to catch A-level enemies, preferably those with positions within the organization. Next, based on the information he received, he planned to send a clone to cooperate with the Red Emperor to specifically investigate places like orphanages. In order to protect the seeds they have sown, the Apocalypse organization will most likely send someone with a higher level, so he can try his luck. Half an hour had passed since Luo Guang asked his clone to ask what he needed to ask. He removed the communication shield and continued to wait for the response team to appear. Although the communication was not turned on, he did not miss the response team, because when he asked Billy questions, the clone was also looking out the window. 30 seconds later, Billy happened to receive a reminder from the intelligence department. She led everyone out of the house and began to clean up the zombies around her. The Apocalypse organization sent a personnel carrier and an armored vehicle with the flag of the Spanish military on them. Luo Guang guessed that the Apocalypse organization was preparing to let them leave Suda as survivors. As before, he modified Billy and others' perceptions, and everyone lined up to board the personnel carrier. Suddenly, Ashley received a call from Knox. She nodded, quickly wrote down what the other party said, and said to Luo Guang, "Minister, Knox said that 2 people came into his apartment. He asked if that person was from RB.S.A.A. Luo Guang shook his head to deny it and asked the other party to convey it, saying, "Did Knox say what the other party did after entering the apartment?" Ashley asked over the phone and then replied, he didn't know what he was doing specifically. He only knew that after the other party entered room 702, he took out many tools to investigate. Luo Guang didn't say that room 702 was not the room where Knox lived, so he thought that the other party might be from the Apocalypse organization. Suddenly his eyes widened, thinking that he had made a mistake and did not do everything perfectly. Gloria's perception is that she took out Facardo and then took Knox away. In his opinion, as long as the results are good, the enemy should not be suspicious, but he ignored the Apocalypse organization's pursuit of adapters of various levels. Facardo is not afraid of biochemical viruses, has not mutated into a zombie, and is himself the target of the Apocalypse organization. Even if he dies, he is still of research value to this organization. The Apocalypse organization is working with both hands. It did not stop the mission directly because of the discovery of doubts, and decided to act according to the original plan for the time being. At the same time, they sent people disguised as Spanish soldiers to clean up traces of the organization's activities in Suda. Word soon came to investigators who went to Knox's apartment. It was Mikwai who was in charge of reporting the situation before. She stood in front of her supervisor Kalji and said, "Brother Hadi and the others did not find Facardo's body in the apartment." After confirming this, the investigators left, becoming aware of Knox's presence. "If that man is not dead, where did he go?" Kalji paused and asked again, "Has the information about Facardo been found?" Mikwai told the results of the investigation. "I found the other parties resume, but the on-site investigation found that no such person existed at all, and the identity information was all false." Kalji thought for a while and said, "Billy must not have misjudged the appearance of the target Knox, it seems that she was right. The enemy must have followed them." Mikwai speculated, "Billy and the others have signal problems. Could it be the enemy's method? Let the receptionist go check on the situation first." Mikwai pressed the earphones in his ears, replied that he had received it, and told his supervisor the latest information, latest news from the intelligence department. The communication of the action team has been restored. What did Billy say? She found no trace of enemies around her, only some zombies. Billy and the others met in the villa area. The wealthy people here had already fled for refuge when the biohazard occurred, so it was normal that no survivors were found. Kulki nodded, lost in thought. Should we just let Billy and the others disappear just to be on the safe side, or should we take this opportunity to lure Facardo into a trap and catch this guy too? She needed more information now and asked, Is there any new information from the response team now? The intelligence department is monitoring and listening through the equipment in the car. The number of people, appearance, and all the random numbers match. However, the psychologist there expressed doubts. The target's personality is inconsistent with his current behavior. Kalji asked again, why are they inconsistent? Became taciturn. What about the possibility of temporary inability to adapt due to changes in the environment? One of them is Shinyu, the kind of person who can chat with anyone under any circumstances. Mikva also specifically explained the meaning of Shinyu. Is this the only thing that's suspicious now? Did Billy say anything about what happened during the communication blackout? Because of the existence of organizational memory modification technology, Kalji, as the supervisor, never thought about the possibility of Billy and the others' rebellion. Mikva also did not expect this, and said, I haven't asked yet. If these people really have questions, we would only alert the snake by asking them rashly. She would not take matters into her own hands when it was not part of the process. In order to allow the other party to make a judgment, she told more information for the supervisor to refer to. The detective gentleman who chased our members in Boston before has also been investigated. The man's name is Sherlock Holmes Watson. It's like he suddenly appeared, and his identity and resume are also unknown. Director Kalji looked up at the other party. The other party would definitely not suddenly talk about irrelevant things, and the situation of that person was basically the same as that of Fakato, so she motioned for him to continue. McVeigh continued, this Holmes is the same as Fakato. They are related to the director of the African branch of the BSAA. Kalji was naturally familiar with the famous figures in his territory, and asked, Luo Guang, I remember he is now an S-level adapter. McVeigh replied, yes, he was originally only A-level, but I don't know when he became S-level. Luo Guang was able to defeat Wesker, who caused a great loss to the Apocalypse organization, so he was naturally an S-level adapter. Humph, the adapter investigation department also has its moments of misjudgment. Kalji, the director of the Apocalypse's African base, snorted and asked, didn't the organization send anyone to contact the other party again? She remembered that a member of the organization had tried to contact them, but failed. Mi Kwai said, the person in charge at that time exceeded the time limit and failed. Later, we stole Luo Guang's genetic data from the gene bank of Umbrella, so there was no follow-up to this mission. As a director, Kalji was familiar with the organization's work style and questioned, it's impossible for a living person to use genetic data. Under normal circumstances, the person in charge would not tell the Apocalypse about the adapters who had not joined the organization. But Wang Wei's identity was slightly unique, so even if she failed in the mission, she would only be temporarily unable to upgrade her level, and she was not punished. After Luo Guang defeated Wesker, the Apocalypse organization thought about sending someone to contact the other party again, but Wang Wei, who learned of this situation, took the initiative to stand up and stop it. Although she had failed 2 missions, Wang Wei completed the mission against the HCF organization, and broke through her own limits in the life and death battle of the mission, activated the S-level blood in her body, and became an S-level member of the organization. As mentioned before, S-level adapters are extremely precious and enjoy various privileges, so the leader of the Apocalypse agreed to her request after the meeting. Because when Wang Wei explained the reason, she mentioned that she wanted to join forces and try again. McVeigh replied, I don't know about this. Luo Guang's matter is directly responsible for the headquarters. Basically, the mission intelligence between the branches of the Apocalypse organization in various continents is exchanged, but the targets that the headquarters is responsible for will not be directly told to the branches below. Kalji also knew that he could not get an answer from the other party. So she brought the topic back to the topic and said, do you have any ideas when you mention these things? Ensuring the secrecy of the organization is the first priority, and the presumption of guilt is presumption. Since we are not sure, We must decisively clean it up. Even if the B level is already the backbone of the Apocalypse organization, it is worth it? McVeigh added, no branch has reported on the relationship between Luo Guang, Ficado, and Holmes yet. We have already made enough contributions by compiling the report. After careful consideration, Calgi agreed with the other party's suggestion and added, we must do a good job of erasing the traces, otherwise it will be meaningless to sacrifice so many members. Meow, thank you for your subscription and votes, and everyone's continued support. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 507. Luo Guang is now a good man who is civilized and sets a new trend. He hasn't said a bad word for a long time. But this time he couldn't help it. He couldn't help cursing what the Apocalypse organization was doing. Why did they play with self-destruction again? Ashley was in the office and was startled. She looked at Luo Guang and asked, what's wrong? Luo Guang took a deep breath, calmed down, shook his head and said, it's okay, it has nothing to do with this biochemical crisis. Ashley was not like Jill who would break the casserole pot to get to the bottom of it. She just said with concern, if you need it, I can help, you don't have to bear it alone. Luo Guang felt a little warm and smiled and replied, I know when the time is right, I will also explain it to you. The Apocalypse organization's affairs really need to be discussed with Ashley and Jill, not only them, but also Leon and Chris. Luo Guang cursed for a reason. Just now, he was concentrating on studying how the Ficado clone would act next, but the troop carrier that the clone was sitting in exploded without warning. Not only that, the armored vehicle leading the way also exploded, and the people on it were killed. The explosion and fire instantly killed everyone in the car except the clone, and no one survived. The Ficado clone rolled on the ground to put out the fire, and also served as a transit station to issue a self-destruction command to the Shinra virus in Billy and the others. The clothes on the clone were basically burned, so Luo Guang could only use hardened armor to make a set of clothes for the clone and then quickly left the scene. These two cars were used by the Apocalypse organization, but they were still nominally owned by the Spanish military. Now that both cars have exploded, Spain will definitely send someone to investigate, so Luo Guang asked the clone to slip away quickly, it is better to have less trouble than more. In addition to this reason, another point is that although the Trojan horse plan failed, the two people who went to Nox's apartment to investigate have been locked, so he asked the clone to change his appearance and go to the enemy's location. Luo Guang leaned back in his chair and sighed. This Apocalypse organization is really troublesome. The previous attempt to fish for the big fish ended up with the enemy blowing up the entire base. The Trojan horse plan just now ended up with the Apocalypse blowing up the entire vehicle. Having suffered 2 losses, he planned to let his clones follow from a distance, collect information, and wait for the opportunity when the enemy was alone. Anyway, the clones can change their appearance at any time, so he just needs to ask the Donald family to prepare more identity documents. As the Apocalypse organization investigated, these identities can only cope with on-site investigations at best. As long as the investigation is in-depth, they will be exposed, but they are enough for temporary tracking. Another week passed. The Ficado clone sent by Luo Guang extracted the T-virus stored in the body at the hotel and gave it to his other clone to send back to the headquarters. After a simple analysis, he found that the T-virus had traces of being modified by someone. The biggest change was that its reproduction ability in the human body was enhanced, so the hotel manager and others mutated so quickly. BSAA also collected the virus at the scene in Suda as usual, and the results of his analysis were exactly the same. Obviously, the threat of the Beekeeper organization is even greater. After handing over the virus, Ficado's clone has been tracking the 2 people from the Apocalypse organization these days. These two people are called Hardigo Yaj and Simonas Yaj, and they are twins. He has investigated these two people. They are not orphans, and their experiences from childhood to adulthood can be traced. This is different from the training process mentioned by Gloria and others, but considering the existence of those substitutes, it is normal that the life experiences of Hardigo and these two people can be found. The backgrounds of the two are perfect and can withstand various investigations. Luo Guang believes that the other members of the apocalypse are the same, so unless these people take the initiative to expose themselves, he will not be able to find the people of this organization through investigation. For these two people, he did not take action for the time being, but let the clone lurk around them. There is no more than 3 times, and he will not allow failure again this time. When the activities of the Apocalypse organization became more and more frequent, he had already asked the Donald family and the Red Emperor to investigate from both real and online aspects. If Luo Guang had not really met the people of the Apocalypse organization, he might have thought that this organization was just a fictitious force in the mouths of those conspiracy theorists, just like everyone else. Next, he was going to make a report to the X organization and use the power of the entire X organization to dig out the entire Apocalypse organization. Before, he had no solid evidence, so he had never said anything about the apocalypse. But this time he recorded Gloria's words with his mobile phone in advance and uploaded them to the server for storage. In addition, the existence of the Beekeeper organization was enough to attract Simmons' attention. He believed that the X organization knew that there was such an organization hidden under its nose, and it would definitely not stand idly by. Thinking of this, Luo Guang pressed the button on the desktop and called Ashley in. "What's wrong, Minister?" Ashley just thought that Luo Guang had something to tell her to do. The two were still quite well behaved when they were at work. Luo Guang said, "Let's go back to the lighthouse country in December. First, go meet your parents, and then go to the party. There is nothing to hide about the 3 of them. Telling your friends openly is a respect for Jill and Ashley." Ashley asked curiously, "Party? With whom?" "My friends, that is, Leon and his friends." After hearing what Luo Guang said, Ashley thought for a moment and understood his intention. She smiled and said, "Your friends, especially Leon, will definitely be surprised at our current relationship." She did not tell Leon about her success, just to give him a surprise. "I think he will be more envious than surprised," Luo Guang replied. After Leon and Ada's relationship progressed, Ada still flew around the world as before, so Leon could only rely on his right-hand girl to solve the problem. Ashley smiled and said, "Okay, I'll confirm the work schedule." This week, countries such as Italy and anti-biochemical organizations are also active. The losses caused by the biochemical crisis incidents during this period are not too large compared to the previous biochemical crises. Because there are too many biochemical crises related to the T-virus, various anti-biochemical organizations have rich experience in dealing with them, so they are naturally handy to solve them. As time went by, the troops of BSAA were in place one after another, and the biochemical crisis in Ceuta was soon quelled. The situation in Gibraltar on the other side was similar. Before the Italian reinforcements arrived, the FBC had resolved the crisis. If we only look at the casualties, this time the BSAA is not as good as the FBC. It was not that Luo Guang had any problems with his command, but that Ceuta was holding a carnival at the time, the population was too dense, the virus had been upgraded and transformed, and finally, in panic, the citizens also trampled. All these reasons combined led to a considerable loss in Ceuta this time. Morgan also promoted this victory to a certain extent. Perhaps because he was not happy, he did not seem too happy when he was interviewed. As for the biochemical crisis that Jill was responsible for, it was basically over, and the list of deaths and missing persons was being counted. She learned from Leon that the survivors had become members of the Beekeeper organization, so this time she was going to start the investigation from this aspect, and the person in charge was Parker. The cities that have experienced the crisis will need to undergo a large-scale disinfection and inspection to ensure that no fish have slipped through the net, and then the survivors will be allowed to go back to live again. The Italian Navy did not return home just because the biochemical crisis was basically resolved. They were divided into 3 groups, 2 of which went to Ceuta and Gibraltar respectively, with the purpose of communicating with the local navy. In fact, they were going to confirm whether the navies of the 2 countries had relaxed their underwater vigilance due to the biochemical crisis, and at the same time to investigate the missiles that fell into the city. According to the results of the investigation, when the biochemical crisis occurred, the underwater monitoring station was not harassed, so the sonar was operating normally. The monitoring records showed that everything was normal, and no submarine took the opportunity to slip away, and the code on the missile was deliberately filed off, and it was impossible to confirm whether it was on the stolen submarine. The 3rd group of the Italian Navy did not go ashore to investigate, but directly conducted underwater detection in the Strait of Gibraltar and the 2 adjacent waters before and after. Finally, until the BSAA evacuated Ceuta, Italy still found nothing. After hearing this news, all the people responsible for the stolen submarine incident couldn't help but have a question in their minds. Where did the submarine go? No one could give them an answer. Italy began to get angry and burned military funds, letting warships wander around the Mediterranean like crazy, constantly searching for the location of the submarine. After receiving the request from Italy, the countries that had Harpoon anti-ship missiles did not make trouble and immediately sent people to count the warehouses. The loss of missiles is not a trivial matter. The reason behind this may be the worms in the army, so the countries attach so much importance to it. As a result, all countries except Italy were relieved because they did not lose missiles. With the replies from various countries, the Italian president announced that the stolen submarine had left the Mediterranean, the warships carrying out the mission were also recalled, and the commander of the navy resigned and needed to be investigated by the Military Intelligence Bureau. As soon as the statement came out, the Greyhound organization immediately followed the footsteps of the Beekeeper organization and was on the focus list of various countries. The Greyhound organization was originally a bioterrorist organization active only in Italy. But now that they have stolen a submarine, their threat is no longer limited to one country or one continent, and they are capable of threatening the whole world. As long as the stolen submarine is not recovered, the major countries in the world cannot relax their vigilance, and small countries, due to economic and other practical reasons, feel that they are not worth being attacked, so they just lie down. Leon S. Kennedy knocked on the door and entered the White House's presidential office. President Seymour just hung up the phone, looked up at Leon, and said, "I asked you to come here because I have a task for you." Leon confirmed, "Is it for me or for DSO?" "Well." President Seymour only came directly to Leon because this matter is related to the biochemical crisis. He finally decided to let Leon carry out the mission alone, and said, "I will sign a secret order for you. If you need assistance, you can take the secret order to other departments for help, but the specific mission objectives must be kept confidential throughout the process." Leon nodded and replied with a received. President Seymour said, "Italy asked us to investigate our arsenal to see if there were any missiles lost. You should know that, right?" "Yes, this is related to the Greyhound organization, so it is within the scope of DSO's work. That's why Leon took the initiative to pay attention." Seymour confirmed that the other party knew the general situation, so the next explanation was much simpler, saying, "In fact, our warehouse lost missiles." Leon was shocked and asked quickly, "But I remember when we reported to Italy, we said that no missiles were lost." President Seymour was filled with anger, and his face showed the previously suppressed anger directly. This was actually a manifestation of his trust in Leon. He said, "Other countries did not lose missiles, only our missiles were stolen, which is too embarrassing for the country. The lighthouse country is a world power, how can it do such a shameful thing?" This time, he thoroughly checked and found that not only the Harpoon anti-ship missiles, but also other military equipment were lost, and even rags were used to make up for the numbers, so he was so angry. Leon didn't think so. He thought it was meaningless to hide such things. It would be better to tell the truth so that Italy would not make a misjudgment. After confirming that no country had lost missiles, Italy would naturally think that the submarine that launched missiles to attack Ceuta and Gibraltar was the stolen submarine. The result is like now, the announcement said that the submarine has left the Mediterranean. But Leon is now a mature agent, so he did not directly question the president's decision, but asked, "Those missiles have been modified and did not explode. Their shells and other parts should be relatively intact. If Italy gets the missiles, they can compare the numbers." He seemed to be making a suggestion, but in fact he wanted to confirm the situation of those missiles. Luo Guang was responsible for the biochemical crisis in Ceuta. As long as the other party could help tell Italy, the misunderstanding could be resolved. President Seymour replied, "I contacted Spain, Britain, and FBC immediately, and they have helped to delete the numbers." Although Spain and Britain were victims of this incident, the lighthouse country was rich, so both countries happily agreed to help. In fact, one of the missiles that fell on Ceuta was recovered by the BSAA. However, after Luo Guang asked the X organization to confirm the ownership of the missile numbers, he received the task of deleting the numbers, so Italy got nothing from these missiles. What Leon thought of, he also thought of, so Luo Guang had contacted K. Geston in Italy to explain the situation in person. So the Italian government knew that these missiles were likely to be those stolen from the lighthouse country, but they did not make it public, and just took this opportunity to end the crazy search operation in the Mediterranean. This action was actually done for the country's face. Leon continued to ask, "The missile has been stolen, and it is very likely that it has been launched. All we can do next is to arrest the people who are in charge of the missile and put them on trial, right?" President Seymour then explained the matter, saying, "This is the normal process, but the problem is that there are more than 4 missiles lost, and I need you to find the rest." Meow, thank you for your subscription and votes. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 508. Losing 4 missiles was embarrassing enough, but the president told him that more than 4 missiles were lost. Leon finally understood why the other party was so angry. He suddenly had a question and said, "But the military knows about this, right? Why do I need to keep it secret?" President Seymour now has a low level of trust in the military and said, "But the military doesn't know that I sent you out to find missiles. They will only think that I sent you to perform anti-biochemical missions." At first, he also thought about letting the entire DSO find missiles, but he was worried that he would not be able to find anyone to consult when a biochemical crisis occurred in the country. So in the end, he decided to let Leon perform the mission alone. Leon thought for a moment and said, "But the missiles were dropped by the military. We can't get around them if we want to investigate the missiles." President Seymour knew this, and said, "I know, but to be honest, I don't have anyone I can trust in the military. You try your best and give it a try. I will also find a way to provide you with the military's investigation report." He couldn't be sure whether the military would cover up the truth or fabricate facts to reduce their own responsibility. Although he just wanted to do his best, Leon didn't think it was the truth, but just a way to appease people. He could only answer, "I know." Leon left the president's office, returned to his dormitory expressionlessly, and then sighed. This task was not easy, and he really didn't have much confidence. He took out his private phone and planned to ask Luo Guang about the missiles first. Of course, Leon didn't say what task he took on, but only said that he heard that the missiles were not numbered and wanted to ask Luo Guang about the situation. Now it's one day earlier than Luo Guang's invitation to Ashley to return home. After listening to Lion's explanation, he said, "We did pick up one of the missiles, and it originally had a number on it. I checked that the number was registered in the lighthouse state. Luo Guang did not hide this matter and said, Simmons asked me to file off the number after he knew about this. Leon believed that Luo Guang must have his own reasons for doing this, and he said directly, if there is a misjudgment on the Italian side. Luo Guang did not wait for the other party to finish, and said, I have talked to the Italian side, and they already know what the facts are. It was their own decision to withdraw the navy. He then analyzed the reasons for Leon, and in simple terms, he found a way out. From a realistic point of view, Italy has lost confidence in recovering the submarine, and naturally does not want to waste time and money. Leon could not change the decision of the Italian government, so he could only accept this reality. Seeing that the other party had nothing to say next, Luo Guang said before the other party hung up the phone, by the way, are you free to get together during the Chinese New Year this year? Chris and the others are free. He just called other people to make an appointment before receiving Lion's call. It depends on the situation of my work this time. I will try my best to come back. Although there are still a few months before the Chinese New Year, Leon has no confidence in this mission and doesn't know how long it will take. Luo Guang said, if you really can't come back, let Ada take your place. It's a good opportunity for everyone to get to know each other, otherwise it will be bad if she is caught due to any misunderstanding. Leon knew that the other party was joking as soon as he heard it, but he did think about being with Ada openly, and he would naturally meet his friends at that time. He knew Ada well, and smiled bitterly, she will definitely not accept the invitation. She is afraid of being caught by you again. When Leon was with Ada, he learned a lot from her, such as Luo Guang once caught Ada and sent her to Simmons. He asked Luo Guang, and the other party explained that Ada had not turned over a new leaf at that time, and he did not search Ada's body to take away the small props hidden on her body. Otherwise, even if Simmons did not restrict Ada's movements because of his heartache, she would not be able to escape Simmons' clutches so easily. Luo Guang knew that the other party would not agree, and he did not mention that Guangming had taught him to deliberately let Ada go. Leon said, she promised me that she would not do that kind of thing again. Although he encountered a biochemical crisis on his first day at work, he was a policeman after all, and now he was eating public food, it was not easy to be with Ada. Although Ada had a criminal record, Leon thought about it. As long as she made up for her mistakes and turned into a tainted witness, she would at least not suffer the pain of prison, and she would be cleaned up after the probation period. Luo Guang did not know what the other party was thinking, and said, the more beautiful a woman is, the more likely she is to lie. Leon, you should be careful. Leon said that he would definitely not be deceived this time. Luo Guang smiled and said, that's fine. If there is nothing else, I'll hang up. Leon put away the phone and turned on the computer to check the mailbox. The relevant information had not arrived yet, so he waited for more than an hour before receiving it. Let me see where I can start the investigation. Seymour was forcing him, but Leon had to face the challenge. Leon looked at the dimly lit screen, read the contents carefully, and said in disbelief, no way. These missiles were not lost, but sold. Even missile launchers were given as gifts. This news was both surprising and joyful to him. He was surprised that the military of the lighthouse country was so corrupt that they sold such weapons and even offered welfare benefits. With the money in hand, people naturally became bold enough. The fleet of the people who sold the missiles rarely went on missions except for daily training and maintenance. This Harpoon anti-ship missile was not used once a year. He was happy that there was a buyer, and he had a clear target, which was better than looking for clues everywhere like a headless fly. As long as he tracked down the buyer, he would have a chance to recover the remaining missiles. Thinking of this, Leon continued to check the following intelligence. The identity of the buyer was confirmed quickly, because the arrested officer told everything he knew in order to get a reduced sentence, and he told all the information about the buyer. He even thought that the officer had thought of this day a long time ago, so he was also collecting information about the buyer when doing business. The officer had only one client, a buyer from Pananistan. There were not many people who could buy missiles and wanted to buy them, so it was not surprising that there was only one client. Leon did not expect that Pananistan, which had been in war for many years, had money to buy Harpoon anti-ship missiles. The average cost of this thing is also $900,000. The officer sold each one for $1.5 million. No wonder he gave it a missile launcher. If you want to change the combat disadvantage of Pananistan and the army of the lighthouse, this anti-ship missile is not very useful. It is better to spend this money to buy rocket launchers or individual air defense missiles. But Leon thought that Ceuta and Gibraltar might be an attempt. Those missiles that have not been used are likely to be converted into biological and chemical missiles and then launched at the cities of the lighthouse or the garrisons on the front line. The context of the incident gradually took shape in his mind. The rebels of Pananistan are likely to have reached a cooperation with the Greyhound organization. The Greyhound organization provides biological and chemical viruses to Pananistan, while Pananistan provides missiles to cover the submarines stolen by the Greyhound organization to leave the Mediterranean. But there is a doubt or contradiction here. According to the information Leon got from the Avengers Forum, Luo Guang said that the biochemical crisis in Ceuta and Gibraltar was caused by the beekeepers, which means that the beekeepers and the Greyhounds were working together. He pondered and came up with a general explanation in his mind, that is, the three parties came together and cooperated with each other. Leon had a general idea in his mind, and after checking the information, he felt that this was the case. It was not easy to take away the missiles, so the Pananistan buyers transported them away by ship. The registration place of this ship is in Italy, which happens to be the range of activities of the Greyhounds. Ships generally have ACE systems and GPS positioning systems. The enemy did not shut down these two systems, so it was easy for him to track the movements of the ship. It took him about half an hour to compile a simple report, ready to report to President Seymour first, and then apply for a business trip. President Seymour did not expect that Leon would find the clue so quickly, and said in surprise, "Let me see it." After reading Lyon's report, he nodded in agreement and said, "Your speculation is indeed reasonable. Speaking of Pananistan, I had already prepared to cease fire and withdraw troops, but I did not expect that the other party launched a terrorist attack in Boston." Major General Wilson used speeches and public opinion propaganda to prove that Pananistan was the culprit of the Boston bombing, and the evidence was all forged. President Seymour knew it well. But the impact of the Boston bombing was too bad. Compared with not being able to find the murderer of the bombing, it was obviously more in his interest to identify the murderer as soon as possible, so he acquiesced to the other party's statement. If other terrorist organizations come out to claim it, Seymour can also put the blame on Major General Wilson. Major General Wilson naturally knew this, but in order to get promoted, he was willing to take this potential risk. Leon nodded and did not express his own thoughts. President Seymour continued, "Now we have decided to continue the peacekeeping operations in Pananistan, so the other party should buy these missiles to retaliate against us. This explains the reason why Pananistan cooperates with the two organizations." Leon said, "I have searched the ship's navigation track. On the day of the biochemical crisis in Ceuta, the ship had entered the Mediterranean. The missile came from the west. Theoretically, this missile can plan a route, fly from the east to the west, and then land in the city from the west. But in fact, there are troops stationed in both cities, and they will not watch the missiles flying over their heads. They will definitely discover and intercept them. The reason why submarines are so threatening is that they are hidden and difficult to detect. The success rate of air defense and missile defense systems in intercepting close-range missiles is not high at all." Although President Seymour was not a professional, he quickly thought of a possibility: the enemy could send the missiles to another ship in the Atlantic. According to the positioning system, Leon could see that the Italian ship did not connect with other ships, but what if the other ship did not turn on the positioning system? So he could not confirm this, so President Seymour's words were likely correct. Leon said, "That's right. In any case, I'm going to Italy to investigate next." President Seymour asked in confusion, "Why not go to Pannenstein? The buyer is from there." Leon explained, "Our goal is to retrieve the missiles, and the only clue now is this Italian ship, so we can only follow this clue to track down and confirm where the missiles were shipped to." "Are you going to interrogate the captain of that ship?" "I don't have law enforcement authority over there. I can only confirm it by tracking or taking away the surveillance records and logbooks on the ship." Seymour shook his head and said, "This is too slow and inefficient. Just wait until I call to confirm." After saying that, he made a phone call. "I just contacted the CIA. They will assist you in arresting him, but you are responsible for the interrogation." Leon was still thinking about the helper, not to mention whether he could make it to the party in time. More people would join in, and in the end, even if the mission failed, someone would share the responsibility. So he hesitated for a moment and asked, "Isn't the CIA trustworthy too?" President Seymour was stunned. Although there are some moths in the military, in order to prevent the incident from being distorted or covered up, the military cannot be involved, but the military's tentacles should not penetrate the CIA in Italy. Before, it was not determined how the missile was thrown, and it was necessary to investigate whether the military had rebelled, so Leon was asked to keep it secret. Judging from the current situation, it is considered treason for an officer to sell military arms to the enemy, but it is still slightly different from the current treason. This shows that although the military is corrupt, it is not beyond hope. Therefore, there was no need for him to keep Leon secret. Thinking of this, he did not immediately give Leon a definite answer. "You go back first and prepare to go to Italy." "I'll think about it." Yes, Leon left the office without saying much. Less than half a day before issuing the mission to Leon, President Seymour knew in his heart that he was anxious and angry about the missiles, which led to him issuing the wrong order, but changing the order overnight would be too detrimental to his dignity. That's why he asked Leon to go back first instead of changing the order directly. Rubbing the bridge of his nose, President Seymour took a few deep breaths to calm down his mind. He had acted too hastily and not thought deeply about the stolen missiles because of his anger, so he decided to re-examine the whole matter. 2 hours later, President Seymour was ready to notify Leon to come over. He is going to let Leon lead the team and lead the CIA abroad to retrieve the missile. Suddenly the phone rang. It was his secretary calling, saying that Major General Wilson wanted to meet with him. In the previous Boston bombing case, it can be said that the two sides hit it off and each got what they needed. With the previous experience of cooperation, President Seymour agreed to the meeting. When Major General Wilson came in, he did not speak official words and went directly to the topic, saying, "Your Excellency, I checked the information on the missile sale case and found that this matter involves the country of Pannenstein. You want to investigate this matter." President Seymour knew the reason why the other party came here as soon as he heard it. "The president is wise." Wilson started to flatter him and said, "The Pannenstein country is definitely planning a conspiracy against our country, and I have been dealing with this country for a long time, so I am the most suitable candidate." Summer looked at the other person's slightly protruding belly and asked, "Do you want to investigate it yourself?" Wilson shook his head and said, "Of course I am not qualified for this. But Tristan Jason is a hero in the Pannenstein War and is very familiar with Pannenstein. We can appoint him to be responsible for this investigation." Meow, thanks for subscribing and voting meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Meow. Chapter 509. Leon was sitting on a plane to Italy, listening to the person next to him. As he listened, he still felt sorry that the person talking next to him was not a beauty, but a tough guy. Leon sighed and said, "So it becomes you and I acting together." Sitting next to him was Tristan Jason, who he had met once before. This time Jason joined the missile investigation on behalf of the military, or more precisely, on behalf of Wilson. President Seymour accepted Major General Wilson's statement and decided to let him join, not because he was moved by his speech about cleaning up the Army's termites. Just like Leon wanted to find the CIA to share the responsibility, he also wanted to find the military to share the responsibility. In addition, the military is a major force in the country after all, and it also has a lot of say in the domestic political arena. Even if Seymour himself is in the high position of the president of the lighthouse country, it is a foolish dream for him to go against the military. After all, he doesn't want to laugh in a convertible. So it is better to pull half and fight half, and divide the military. In the end, President Seymour did not give the investigation to Major General Wilson, but chose a joint action. Although he was in a higher position than Wilson, he gave the other party the opportunity to make the final decision, and sent Leon and the CIA to supervise and assist the other party. Major General Wilson had no hope of getting the command at first, so he couldn't help showing a slightly surprised expression when he heard the news. But he quickly adjusted his expression, did not modestly refuse, directly accepted the appointment, and promised to do things beautifully. Wilson's main goal is to make merit in this incident, and then take office as the Minister of Defense of the lighthouse country by criticizing the current military corruption. According to the law, the Minister of Defense of the lighthouse country has always been a civilian, in charge of the three armed forces. So he is planning to abandon his identity as a major general, quit the army and join the political high level of the lighthouse country. He has been planning and striving for this goal over the years. In the war between the lighthouse and Pannenstein, Wilson used the strengthening drugs of Tri-Union to turn the Mad Dog Squad led by Jason into an invincible sword in his hand. Then he used public opinion to create momentum, portraying Pannenstein as a country full of sins, and also portrayed the Mad Dog Squad as war heroes of the lighthouse. And he, who was in charge of the command behind the scenes, naturally became a great contributor to maintaining world peace. But the Minister of Defense is elected every 5 years, and no matter how great his achievements are, he cannot kick the other party out of office, so the criticism of corruption mentioned earlier is aimed at the current Minister of Defense, and he wants to bring the other party down. In short, the two big guys have reached an agreement, so at this time, Leon and Jason will go to Italy together for investigation. Jason told Leon these things. In fact, he was hinting to the other party that he was the main person in this operation, and the other party was only supervising and assisting. Leon was not very interested in the leadership of the operation, and was willing to be responsible for supervision and assistance. Jason saw that the other party looked indifferent, so he didn't say much, as long as he didn't interfere with his plan. They were not familiar with each other, and Leon saw that the other party didn't seem to want to communicate too much, so he didn't take the initiative to speak. The two of them got off the plane in silence like strangers. The CIA sent someone to pick them up at the airport, and after picking up the two people in the car, he sat in the driver's seat. He took out 2 documents from the co-pilot and gave them to the 2 people, and began to explain the situation. The captain of the ship and his men have all been arrested with the assistance of Italy. In order not to alert the enemy, the CIA first asked the Italian Customs and Maritime Police to detain the ship, and then found a reasonable reason to arrest all the crew members. While checking the information, Leon asked, "What are the results of your review?" The CIA agent said while driving, "They all said they didn't know about the missile transportation." "How could a prisoner be so stupid as to admit what he had done?" Jason said. "Didn't you force a confession or use some high-tech?" His tone was a bit aggressive, but the CIA agent didn't care too much and replied, "Forced confessions or using truth serums have side effects, so we have to wait until you come. Otherwise, if the crew is ruined, the 2 specially dispatched agents will not thank them, but will only complain about them. The CIA is not so stupid to do such a thankless task." Leon looked back and forth, and there was no information he had paid attention to before, so he asked, did this ship encounter other ships on the way back from the lighthouse country? Not only was it not mentioned in the confession, but the video surveillance content was not written in the information. The content that is not in this record is what we did not ask, and you can interrogate it in person later. The CIA is not being sloppy or deliberately neglecting this task. They spent a lot of time planning the arrest, so they only had time to do a preliminary interrogation and didn't have time to read the information they got back. Jason threw the information aside. It would be a waste of time to read such a report with little substantive content. Leon didn't throw away the information. Anyway, there was nothing to do in the car, so he continued to look through it to understand the situation. The CIA agent looked at the different styles of the two people in the rearview mirror and found it interesting. When their department learned that Leon and his team were coming, they conducted a routine investigation, and the personality analysis results matched the current performance of the two people. Especially Tristan Jason, who was born in the military and has been an agent for a short time, is very vigorous and efficient. If he doesn't wear a suit, he can't be seen as an agent. Arriving at the place where the crew was detained, the CIA agent asked, "How do you plan to interrogate? Do you need any assistance from us?" Leon looked at Jason, who was only there to supervise and assist. Jason replied, "Agent Kennedy and I will interrogate separately, and then cross-examine. CIA's assistance is not needed for the time being. We will contact you if we need it during the interrogation." Under normal circumstances, although the CIA is responsible for assistance, it should also speak in a negotiating tone, but he still looks like he is giving orders. The CIA agent who received the two labeled the other party as low EQ, but he didn't get angry and replied, "I know, the crew list is here, just tell us who you want to interrogate, and we will take them to the interrogation room." In fact, his words were hinting that Jason and the others needed their assistance from the beginning. Leon heard what the other party meant and said quickly, thank you for your trouble." The CIA agent nodded and handed the crew list to Leon, as if Leon was the one leading the team. Jason didn't care about this. He only cared about his own plan. It was meaningless for him to befriend the CIA. Leon didn't open the list to choose, but handed it to Jason and said, "You choose first." Jason was not polite either. He pointed out 3 people in a row, and then said, "These 3 people take turns. I'm too lazy to call out names every time." "Let me see." The CIA agent took the list and confirmed it, took out a pen to tick it, and then asked Leon, "Agent Kennedy, what about you?" Leon took the list and also pointed out 3 people, saying, "Just these 3 people." The CIA agent drew 3 circles on the list again and said, "Okay, then I'll get ready, and someone will come to take you to the interrogation room later." Next, there was another partner who greeted and received Leon and the other 2 with him. He decided to let his good partner be responsible for Jason's side. After watching the other party leave, Leon asked Jason, "Why don't you choose the captain and the first mate? Don't you think they don't know?" The position on the ship was marked behind each person on the list. When he chose people, he also looked at Jason's choice. Jason looked out the window, not looking directly at Leon, and replied, "The captain and the first mate are basically old hands who have experienced countless storms on the sea. It is not easy to interrogate them. It is better to start with their subordinates." He did not hide his thoughts. After giving a reasonable explanation, he continued, "And the captain and his men work in the steering room every day. They are high up and can't see the situation below. The people responsible for carrying missiles and checking whether the cargo is correct are ordinary sailors below." Leon followed the other party's train of thought and said, "You mean it might be that the people below deceived the people above?" The people he chose were the captain, the first mate and the second mate, basically the 3 highest-ranking people on the ship. The 2 people's choices were poles apart. Jason replied, "I chose these people just to rule this out, didn't I? The CIA working outside was very efficient, and soon an agent came to take the two to the interrogation room. The two interrogation rooms were very close, and the CIA in charge of reception was also waiting here. When he saw the two, he said, "The first person you chose is already inside. Come out and call us if you need us." He also specially prepared two chairs outside with books on them. Leon still said thank you politely, and Jason just nodded, then pushed the door in. After both of them went in, the CIA agent asked his partner, "Who do you think will come out first?" The partner knew the other's personality well, rolled his eyes, and replied unhappily, "No bet, read your book." Leon walked into the interrogation room, where the second officer was sitting. The metal chair he sat on was welded to the ground, and his hands and feet were all locked on the chair with iron handcuffs. This is not the police station, so there is no table in front of the other party to block his sight, so he can easily confirm whether the other party is trying to escape. He chose the second mate as the first interrogation target, and the first mate was the second. The purpose is to understand the captain's situation from the side, and finally use it to interrogate the captain. Leon looked around, and there were various torture instruments on the side, but there was no truth serum, nor any recording and video equipment. Truth serum is a controlled item and cannot be used at will, so there are usually special personnel responsible for its use, and naturally it will not be prepared in advance. I said I don't know anything. You have to ask the people below how these drugs got on the ship. No matter how much you ask, I can't spit out anything. Before Leon could speak, the second mate began to confess. There was no blood on his body, he looked a little tired, and there was no sign of beating. From this point of view, Leon could confirm that the CIA did not torture him. His guess was correct, so the tone of the second mate's speech was only tired and a little scared. Seeing that Leon didn't say anything, the second mate shouted again that it was unfair. Leon calmed down, said a time, and then said, "How much do you remember about the long voyage during this period?" "Huh," the second mate was stunned and asked, "D product was not just moved." Leon pretended to be impatient, caught the question in the other party's words, and interrupted, "It seems that you know when D item will board the ship." "I don't know," the second mate immediately denied. He couldn't think of a reason for a while, and was sweating profusely. Leon said, "If you don't know, don't talk nonsense. Whatever I ask you, you answer it." "Yes, I know," the second mate immediately looked obedient. Leon was very satisfied with the second mate's attitude and said, "Tell me about the situation of that voyage, starting from the beginning." Let me think about it." Leon said doubtfully, "This is just your last trip, you won't forget it so quickly. Sea transportation is different from air transportation. The cargo volume is large, but the time for a trip is often very long. It usually takes 2 weeks to 1 month from the lighthouse country to Italy. And life at sea is not as interesting as imagined, it is still a little boring." So the second mate replied, "This trip will also take a lot of time, I have to think about the details." Leon did not urge, and the other party did not let him wait for a long time. The second mate quickly talked about the situation and recalled the questions. Leon would write down the key information from time to time and interrupt to ask questions, and soon he understood the other party's trip. He confirmed again, "Did the ship really not stop?" The second mate said honestly, "I can only guarantee that the ship did not stop when I was on duty." Leon did not say whether he believed it or not, just said that he knew it and walked out. "Come out," the CIA agent closed the book and came to greet him. His partner was not here. "Is there a situation?" Leon keenly noticed that the atmosphere had changed a little. The agent nodded and replied, "I didn't expect Agent Jason to be so good at asking things from the second person." Leon asked more detailed questions, which naturally took a lot of time. He asked, "Jason, do you have anything to tell me?" The CIA agent nodded and said, he is following the clues to dig out the person behind the scenes. My partner will bring the person who was confessed to the interrogation room. This is what Jason is doing. As usual, he has to tell the supervisor, so he asked the agent to tell Leon. Then he wanted Leon to do it. The CIA agent continued, he asked you to interrogate the senior personnel at hand, and then interrogate him after confirming that there is no problem. Leon had no objection to Jason's arrangement. Now is the time to take the credit. Since the other party wants to take it alone, let him take it. I know. If there is any other latest news later, please come in and tell me. I need to report to the higher UPS. The CIA agent made an okay gesture, and then said, then I will help you take the second mate back, and then bring the first mate over. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 510. While Leon was still interrogating the second officer, the CIA agent outside the door knocked on the door and came in, asking him to go out because he had something to discuss. The two walked out, and Jason was already standing there. He waited until the door of Leon's interrogation room closed before he said, I know where those missiles were transported. It was obviously a happy thing, but his tone did not change at all, as if everything was within his expectations. Leon asked in surprise, where? Jason replied, they handed over the goods when they were in the Italian seaport, and the destination of the ship they took over was Turkey. Is there a specific location? The CIA agent interrupted at this time, yes, Agent Jason has already asked us to prepare the plane. Now it's almost time to get in the car and go to the airport. Jason nodded to show that the other party was right. Leon said, I understand. Also, the people I interrogate don't know about the missiles. You guys should see how to deal with these people. Just find an excuse to let them go if they are innocent. The CIA agent immediately responded, don't worry, we are professionals in this area. Leon and Jason took their luggage and got into the car bound for the airport. Please tell us what you found during the interrogation. Jason looked at the other party and said, this Italian cargo ship did not stop when it came from the lighthouse country. Instead, it used a relatively small ship to transport the missiles used by the Greyhound organization on the way. So the missiles that hit Ceuta and Gibraltar were not launched from this ship. That's right. It was already late at night at that time, and the chief mate on duty was sleeping in the wheelhouse. Naturally, he didn't notice the cargo transfer. Leon asked curiously, does this mean that neither the captain nor the two deputies were involved in this incident? According to what they said, it's not true. The goods are all packed in containers. Naturally, these high-ranking people will not personally inspect it. Jason didn't say it for sure. Leon felt that the other party's words seemed to be referring to Sang and Hui. Every crew member on the ship is important and is a necessary cog in making the ship move. Only by working together can they survive in the face of strong winds and waves. So in most cases, captains and others are just grasshoppers on a ship, rather than high-level commanders. However, what the other party wanted to do had nothing to do with Leon, so he said, since the missile was transferred midway, how did they know that the missile was transported to Turkey? People from the Greyhound organization or Pannenstein would be so stupid. Leon raised this question not because he didn't believe the result of Jason's interrogation, but because he found doubts and was worried that the two of them would run into the enemy's trap. Jason shook his head and said, how could the enemy be so stupid? I didn't say that the enemy had transferred all the missiles. Pannenstein and the Greyhound organization only have a cooperative relationship, and the 4 missiles bought for a lot of money were in exchange for the biochemical weapons in the opponent's hands. Virus chips. Leon thought about what the other party said, and then said, that is, the ship responsible for transporting missiles is the Greyhound organization's ship. Jason did not feel impatient, but explained very seriously and carefully, it may also be a transfer station for transporting missiles. But they traded on that boat. The person who was interrogated said that they handed over the missiles in one hand and took them in the other. Biochemical virus samples. Leon understood and asked quickly, in other words, the biochemical virus was transported to Turkey along with the missile, and then headed to Pannenstein. Jason nodded to indicate that what the other party said was correct. Leon said nervously, has the CIA contacted Turkey to intercept the missiles? No, because it's confidential. Jason snorted coldly after finishing speaking, as if he was very disdainful of this kind of keeping secrets for the sake of face. What about our troops in Pannenstein? Jason's reaction was obviously slower than before and said, don't worry, Major General Wilson has already made precautionary preparations. After speaking, he changed the subject and said, even if we inform each other on the Turkish side, they will not help intercept them. These terrorists have biochemical viruses in their hands, and the target is not them. There is no need for Turkey to cause trouble. To mess with them for us. It's okay to say that the interception was successful, but if the interception failed or the enemy directly detonated missiles or released biochemical viruses in Turkey, who would settle the bill in the end? Even if the FBC or BSAA are called in to help, it will have a big impact on the city's economy. For example, the current economy of Harlan City is in a state of collapse. Leon successfully changed the subject and continued to ask, since the other party has transported the missiles back to the country, then the target? Jason replied, yes, the opponent's target must be our country's garrison in Pannenstein. Before boarding the plane, Leon conducted a routine report and then met Jason again. When he saw the other party put away his mobile phone, he asked more, have you just finished your report? Jason raised his eyebrows and said, why, you are only allowed to report the matter to your superiors. In fact, Wilson took the initiative to call and ask Jason to report the situation. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If you miss it, you may not have such a good opportunity. So Wilson is very concerned about the progress of this missile recovery mission. No, Leon choked, wanting to slap himself for talking too much just now. He shouldn't put his hot face on his cold butt. The two of them flew to Turkey very quickly, and the local CIA also sent people over. However, the situation was different from that in Italy. The identity of the CIA agent was hidden, and his job on the surface was a taxi driver with flexible commuting. Jason got straight to the point as soon as he got in the car, have you tracked anyone? Before leaving, he sent the intelligence of the enemy he was going to track to the CIA here. The CIA agent adjusted the middle rear view mirror, turned the mascot on it, and then replied, we have tracked them, but the other party has run far away. We are not powerful here, and there are only 2 people following them, so we can't help you catch them. Turkey is also a member of NATO, but it chose to join in order to resist expansion during the Cold War, and reached close cooperation with the lighthouse country. With the end of the Cold War, the relationship between this country and the lighthouse country has become complicated. It is trying to establish new diplomatic relations with the bear country, which is naturally not conducive to the expansion of CIA personnel. Leon wanted to confirm the number of enemies he would face later. How many enemies are there in total? The CIA agent told him what he knew, there is only one large truck. We don't know if there are people in the back cargo compartment, but after loading missiles and cargo for cover, there shouldn't be too many people hiding. There are borders between countries, so it is not easy for these enemies to transport missiles back to Pannenstein from land. Leon thought for 2 seconds and said, let the borders of those countries help. The CIA agent interrupted him and said, I know what you mean, but they won't help. The countries between Turkey and Pannenstein are not on good terms with the lighthouse country. The agent added, We even suspect that these countries will open the door and let the enemy go directly. And like Turkey, these countries don't want to get into trouble. Jason suddenly expressed his decision and said, if we can track the route, give us a fully fueled car and we will chase them directly. Wait, it's not a good idea for us to chase them like this. Leon had a new idea and said, if we chase them like this, we can only be the opponent's tail, and we will always be a step slower. If you want to catch up with the opponent, you must use a faster speed. Jason wanted to hear the other party's opinion and asked, what do you think? The CIA agent driving the car did not express his opinion, he was just a driver. Leon said, since you said that the opponent's destination is Pannenstein, why don't we intercept them directly at the border of Pannenstein? He took out his pad and said, the opponent drove a car to transport missiles, so the road they chose would not be too bad. While speaking, he also typed on the portable keyboard, and soon he selected 4 routes. Leon expressed his thoughts, in this case, we can take a plane directly to Pannenstein and wait for the other party to come to us. There is another advantage of placing the arrest in Pannenstein, that is, even if these terrorists are determined to self-destruct, they are still in Pannenstein. Therefore, the lighthouse country involved can also avoid diplomatic disputes. The driver also has a certain political sense and nodded. He didn't want such troubles to appear in his responsibility. Jason took a deep breath and said, we are only 2 people, and we can't defend all the roads. Although there are only these 4 roads on the surface, the other party may not take the main road. This means that there are many roads for the other party to enter Pannenstein. Then he said a lot more, which roughly means that now they are tracking all the way, at least they will not lose it, and they can also confirm the time when the enemy enters Pannenstein, so as to prepare in advance. If they give up tracking now and the enemy enters Pannenstein from a road they don't know, then they and the garrison of Pannenstein will be passive. Leon also thought carefully and quickly answered the other party's question, we have other people, and there will definitely not be too many people in the other party's missile transport vehicle. Do you want the Pannenstein garrison to help us block the road? Jason saw through the other party's thoughts. That's right. As for the tracking problem, I want to let the CIA take care of it. The CIA agent turned the car and said, sorry, you have to talk to the people above. As mentioned before, the countries that the enemy passed by next were not very friendly to the lighthouse country, and the CIA was also unable to move in those places, and barely developed a few bases. These bases and personnel are very important to the CIA. They are prepared to be used in key tasks in the future, and naturally they cannot be used for other people's tasks. These words were not suitable for the agent driving the car, so he asked Leon to find the CIA superiors to solve them. Leon did not ask the other party to make a request, and immediately took out the phone to contact President Seymour, without noticing that Jason beside him sighed silently. Although Jason had little contact with the CIA, according to his understanding of the personalities of these senior officials of the lighthouse country, the CIA would definitely not agree, so they still had to follow Wilson's plan. As expected, Jason's idea was correct, and President Samuel told Leon the bad news. Of course, as the president of the lighthouse country, Samuel could also give orders to the CIA to cooperate, and even let the CIA join this mission to get some credit. But he thought further than Leon. In his opinion, Pannenstein's enemies sent the missiles back to their home country, which meant that the enemies would not launch these missiles into the territory of the lighthouse state. This is a crucial thing. Therefore, after President Seymour knew that this threat was eliminated, he did not attach so much importance to the mission of retrieving the missile. Now he continues to carry out such missions more for the lighthouse country's own face and prestige. In addition to retrieving the missiles, there are other means to achieve the same effect, such as increasing Pannenstein's troops or having local special forces carry out retaliatory strikes against Pannenstein's senior officials. As a powerful country, the lighthouse state has more ways to deal with the weak country Pannenstein. President Samur does not feel that he must fight on this task. Therefore, in the end, Leon could only agree to Jason's plan, and the two disguised themselves as businessmen and began their journey to pursue the enemy. They took turns driving, changing cars a few times to avoid being discovered, and finally caught up with the enemy before they entered Pannenstein. We have confirmed which way the enemy is taking, so hurry up and intercept them. Leon is driving now, so Jason can only make the call. It's being done. Jason was already on the phone without the other party saying anything. He sighed in his heart again. Wilson was very strict about time and he couldn't change it. He even had to show that he was trying his best to maintain the other party's planned plan. The most they can do is try to speed up their own side, and then stop the enemy in advance from their own side. According to the plan, he should have successfully obtained the information when interrogating the fourth crew member and then pursued it. Moreover, when I was in Turkey, I was able to travel day and night with the help of Leon. Unexpectedly, I had to barely catch up in the end. The troops garrisoned in Pannenstein are all Major General Wilson's men, so there will definitely be an accident that will cause the enemy to be let go. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but blame Leon. If the opponent can stick to his wait-and-see plan, he can find a way to place Leon on the enemy's path and capture these enemies in advance. Leon didn't know that he was being secretly complained about. He was stepping on the accelerator and continued to pursue the enemy. Almost reaching the border. Jason didn't know what kind of surprise Wilson was preparing for, so he took out his pistol and reminded him, "Be prepared for battle." Leon unbuttoned his coat and hid his gun in the holster under his arm. Not far away, the sound of gunfire came. Upon hearing this, the two lions knew that the border blockade had been attacked by the Pannenstein rebels. The two did not sit idly by and got out of the car immediately using the blast wall as a cover. Jason used the face-swiping skill and was recognized by the defenders at the checkpoint, so he was not beaten by friendly forces. The soldiers trusted Jason so much that they immediately handed him an M16 assault rifle and a vest with a loaded magazine. Although Jason was not wearing a combat uniform, in Leon's eyes, the other person had already blended into these soldiers and did not stand out when walking together, as if he was born to belong to the army. Meow, I can't think of the title. Meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong. Meow. Chapter 511. Major General Wilson was already at Pannenstein's garrison base, paying close attention to the actions of the two Jasons. If the plan fails this time, it will be a failure, and afterwards, those who have lost their use value will have to be cleaned up. He is very busy. So when Wilson saw from the front line camera that Jason actually picked up a gun and went up to fight with the attack force he arranged, he couldn't help but cursed. "Idiot, what are you doing wasting your time here?" Wilson immediately asked his correspondent to contact Jason and inform the other party to chase the person quickly. When Jason heard this order, he showed a troubled expression in front of Leon for the first time. The reason why he stopped to join the battle was naturally to protect these former comrades in front of him. Until now, he did not know that the enemies who attacked his comrades were the Pannenstein rebels who were personally recruited by Wilson. In order to achieve the most realistic effect, Wilson secretly became the financial backer behind these rebels, providing them with money and intelligence. These poor rebels still don't know that the money funded by their sponsors was originally stored in Pannenstein's treasury. Leon looked at Jason with a troubled expression on his face and asked proactively, "Are we leaving?" He is only responsible for supervising and assisting, and the commander-in-chief is still Wilson, not President Summer. In fact, he understood Jason's mood. The other person was a hero in the Pannenstein War. He devoted his life here and established a deep friendship with his comrades. The confusion on Jason's face was also seen by the soldier who handed him the gun. He patted the other party's shoulder and said, "Jason, just leave this place to us, just think of it as returning the favor to you." This soldier and others in this level were once ambushed by the rebels during a mission, and it was the Mad Dog team led by Jason who showed up in time to rescue them. Thanks. Jason nodded and left the weapons and combat vests he had obtained before at the level. With determination in his eyes, he said to Leon, "Let's go." Returning to the previous car, he started the engine, put it into gear, and pressed the accelerator to the bottom. The two hit the road again. The rebels who attacked the level saw someone escaping the level and immediately sent two modified pickup trucks to chase the two people. The enemy's pickup truck was only equipped with iron plates and no high-power weapons such as anti-aircraft guns or heavy machine guns. It's not that the enemy is letting go, but that these heavy weapons have to be used against the soldiers at the level. However, behind each modified pickup truck stood two people holding imitation AK guns, so Leon and the others could not relax at all. Damn it! Leon immediately turned around and leaned against the back of the passenger's seat. The glass behind the car had been shattered, so there was no need for him to reach out of the car window, he could just raise his arm and raise his gun to shoot. "Sit tight!" Jason roared and the car accelerated again. Their car had not been modified. If the tires were punctured and the car rolled over, both of them would be dead. Both sides are moving, and the road is not smooth, and the enemy's pickup truck is not shock-proof, so the clanging sound of Lyons and his vehicles is not always ringing. Jason quickly turned the steering wheel to avoid the enemy's ray and immediately returned to the right position. At the same time, he loudly said, "Now." Although time was tight, so he did not speak clearly, but Leon could understand what the other party meant, and immediately stood up and aimed his head to counterattack. In his special agent training, his dagger scores were the best, and his shooting scores were also in an excellent range. But the weapon in Leon's hand was just a pistol, and it was just as bumpy, so the purpose of his counterattack was not to deal with the pursuers, but to prevent the enemy from attacking. Therefore, he consciously slowed down the shooting speed. As long as the enemy saw the light of fire, his body would react and hide, so that he could delay for a longer time. These rebels are not the kind of fake soldiers in Africa who hold up their axe and shoot guns, but soldiers who have survived years of struggle with the lighthouse countries. The country of Palestine has been in the quagmire of war all year round. The living environment is harsh and the birth rate is very low. In addition, children cannot be born with guns and go to the battlefield directly. Therefore, every rebel soldier is very valuable, and naturally he will not bet that the opponent's bullet will not hit him. Leon retracted, and while changing the magazine, he shouted to Jason, "Hey, I only have a small pistol, but it can't shoot far." His current pistol has a longer barrel, but it is more for the stability of the bullet, and the range is limited by the amount of ammunition charged. "Then do you want to take a gamble? I will find an opportunity to break and approach the opponent." Jason inserted the pistol in the middle where the water glass was placed, seemingly asking Leon for his opinion, but in fact he had already made a judgment in his mind. There were no bunkers in the area, and it wasn't close to the city. If the enemy carries enough bullets, they will be beaten into a hornet's nest sooner or later. Therefore, if they want to survive, they can only find ways to deal with the enemies standing behind the car. Leon smiled and said, "Okay, but you have to take your time when approaching the enemy. The enemy is not a fool. He can take advantage of the range of the assault rifle to fly a kite, or he can take advantage of the distance and the target to slow down and shoot. Therefore, whether Leon and the others can win the bet depends on how quickly they approach the enemy." "Humph, my name and record are not just blown away." After Jason said this, he immediately started planning. He did not slow down immediately, but slowly let the enemy catch up. The sound of gunshots accompanied by clanking sounds rang out. Leon risked his head to fight back, and one of the bullets hit the C-pillar next to him, causing him to shrink back quickly. "Hey, the enemy is getting more and more accurate." Leon shrank back without running out of bullets this time, and added, "The remaining bullets are limited. There are two different levels of horror when a bullet flies past you and hits you. Having experienced various major events, Leon is now a little overwhelmed and unable to calm down. It's almost there. Jason moved around while letting the enemy close to a distance of about 30 meters. Leon fired his gun randomly, emptied the bullets and replaced them with a new magazine, forced himself to calm down, and said, "I'm ready." Jason didn't count down, and took action immediately when he saw someone on the other side run out of bullets. He stepped on the brakes, pulled the handbrake and turned the steering wheel at the same time. The wheels locked directly, the car slowed down quickly, and turned at the same time, inserting between the two enemy cars. Damn, Leon didn't expect the other party to use this method to deal with the enemy, and his shoulder hit the car door directly. "Right now. I'll shoot on the left," Jason shouted, holding a pistol in his right hand, resting it on his left hand, and shooting to the left. Leon held the passenger seat with his left hand and shot with his other hand. Not all enemies were changing bullets, so the enemy still fought back. The two sides instantly switched positions. Jason quickly adjusted the car body, and then chased after them. The enemy's pickup trucks were all equipped with iron plates, which also provided some protection for the cab, so Jason and his two men's attack targets were still the enemies behind the pickup trucks. After a round of confrontation, all the enemies responsible for attacking from behind were shot and fell in the rear cargo box. At the same time, the enemy was frightened by the behavior of the two men, and attacked randomly, without aiming at the two men, so Leon and his men were safe. Jason, with his adrenaline surge, changed to a new magazine and saw the enemy quickly move to both sides and soon disappeared from their sight. He looked down at the fuel gauge and said to Leon, "The fuel tank is broken. We are running out of fuel." The broken part was not at the bottom, so the fuel did not spill out completely, but it was more than half less than before, so Jason discovered the problem. Leon didn't want to continue sitting in this car, so he opened the door and left, saying, "Let's call for help, it's better to send a helicopter directly." Jason nodded and agreed to the other party's suggestion. When Major General Wilson heard this, his mood was instantly not beautiful. So he immediately asked someone to send a helicopter to pick up the two people, and then cursed a few more times, but he didn't ask Jason about the process of the accident. Leon could hear the faint curses from the other party standing next to him. He couldn't help but feel a little sorry for Jason for having such a leader, and he also understood why the other party was so resentful of his superiors. Jason's face was expressionless. He was used to the other party's moodiness. Now he only cares about how to stop Wilson's evil plan next. Leon suddenly said, "We have stopped now, how can the enemy track us?" Jason could only shake his head to show that he had no way. After Wilson finished giving instructions, he sat back in his chair and was also thinking about what to do next. The Pannenstein Resistance Army did have a connection with the Greyhound organization, but without Wilson's assistance, they would not have been able to make such a shocking plan. However, although the two sides cooperated, the trust was not high, and neither organization knew the specific content of the other's plan. The scope of cooperation between the two sides was a transaction of exchanging missiles for biochemical viruses. Regardless of the Greyhound organization's plan, the Pannenstein Resistance Army's plan was generally not complicated. The Resistance Army planned to use the remaining missiles and biochemical viruses to capture a factory built deep in the territory of Pannenstein. Although it looked no different from an ordinary factory in appearance and other aspects, they suspected that the Lighthouse Army was conducting horrific experiments such as human research in this factory. It was normal for civilians to disappear in the chaos of war, but some civilians reported to them that these people were captured by the Lighthouse. Following the clues, they soon discovered the existence of this factory. Wilson had protected the factory well and had a large number of mercenaries guarding it, so the rebels' attack on it ended in failure. The rebels were unwilling to accept this. Although the information was blocked, they still tried their best and successfully found a United Nations investigator. but the investigation results showed that this was just an ordinary oil well and refinery, and no problems were found. They also investigated the video and found no signs of transporting humans in and out of the factory. The rebels were helpless, and they really had no evidence to prove it. Until one day, a civilian escaped from the magic cave and wanted to tell the rebels about his experience. Unfortunately, before he finished speaking, the civilian died of illness and died without any evidence. For the rebels, this was enough. They did not believe in a savior, and they could only save themselves. They wanted to capture the factory and rescue civilians by themselves. And Wilson used this to make himself a sympathizer of Pannenstein. He used money to pave the way, allowing the rebels to effectively strike the Lighthouse Army for the first time and defend the last territories. In addition, he teased the Lighthouse Nation, secretly purchased contraband arms, and helped them get the missiles. Therefore, although the leader of the rebels suspected that the other party might be sent by the Bear Country, he finally told his real plan and goal to the sponsor. Wilson pretended to be enthusiastic and gave advice to the other party's plan, and finally modified it into the current form. This factory is actually the research institute he built when he cooperated with Sanley and Company at that time. After the collapse of Sanley and Company, all the researchers who stayed here were recruited by him. Now that Wilson wants to take the position of Minister of Defense of the Lighthouse Country, he naturally has to clean up the stain on himself, so he plans to take this opportunity to push the matter of the Research Institute onto Pannenstein. They started the war for oil, but the statement to the outside world was that Pannenstein had banned weapons of mass destruction. Wilson felt that now was the opportunity to confirm this point, which could be said to kill two birds with one stone. According to the original plan, Jason and Leon would intercept the missiles before the rebels arrived at the factory. Then Jason took the initiative to mislead Leon, making him think that the rebels were planning to transport the missiles into the factory for modification, slandering the factory as belonging to the rebels. The invitation of the United Nations investigation team can also be interpreted as the enemy's deliberate act to eliminate suspicion. On the other hand, a biochemical crisis has already occurred in the factory at this time. All the researchers of Sanley and Company died, and all the information related to Wilson himself was cleaned up by the Mad Dog Squad who were performing tasks inside, and replaced with false information. After that, the Mad Dog Squad will withdraw from the Institute, and at the same time send some zombies transformed by Pannenstein people into it, and use radio control to disperse and disrupt the positions of these zombies to create a phenomenon that an accident occurred in the Resistance Institute. If the whole plan is successfully completed, Wilson's public opinion offensive will follow. He wants to confirm the fact that Pannenstein is developing biochemical viruses and biochemical weapons, and continue to add a strong stroke to his credit book. As for what will happen to Pannenstein after this incident, he doesn't care at all. Although the plan has changed now, it is still within Wilson's error range, so he just sent a helicopter and didn't give too many instructions to avoid arousing suspicion from others. Jason and Leon are sitting in the helicopter at this time. Before Leon asked what to do next, Wilson called Jason. I know. Jason hung up the phone and turned to Leon and said, "The Major General has retrieved the satellite, let's go and intercept it quickly." "Got it," Leon replied without turning his head, busy sorting out weapons and equipment. He didn't want to encounter the same situation as just now, where he had to shoot at an assault rifle with a pistol in an open field. Major General Wilson was very considerate and prepared assault rifles for the two of them. After all, he didn't want Leon, the witness, to die in the subsequent battle. It was a pleasant surprise that Leon would participate this time. As President Seymour's spy, as long as he could deceive him, an anti-biochemical elite, he could naturally deceive President Seymour. When the helicopter pilot heard that the two did not continue to talk, he asked, "How do you plan to land later?" Jason took over and said, "Kill the driver first, and then go down to perform the mission." Meow, the input method is not obedient recently.